And now on CJC, ChattleBots.
Welcome back to ChattleBots. My name is Jack. I like robot combat, and here's four other people who also like robot combat. We've got robot combat historian and documentary maker CloneKiller.
Hi.
We've got the best pulverizer operator in Las Vegas. We've got Zassa.
Allegedly.
And we've got a few new guys to ChattleBots, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Moneytalks. They pulled me off the street for this.
Yeah, pretty
I'm
much.
Nametab. They wanted me to shut the hell up by typing, so they made me not shut up in talking instead. Maybe a mistake.
Great. And so to come full circle, my name's Jack. You might know me as one of the editors from the BattleBots wiki. Been more of a sporadic editor of the Robot Wars wiki, and I build robots as well. I compete in the UK with Choppy Boy. Apart from that, not really too much else. You guys seem to like our format, so we're back again for another episode. And yeah, how are we all feeling, guys?
Stellar.
Fun today so far.
Fantastic.
Splendid.
Love to hear it. So, so starting off the episode, we have our bot of the week. Last week, we've done a few of these already. This week, it is P1.
Oh boy.
So, P1, built by Brandon Zielinski of Aberrant Robotics. It debuted in the 2019 season. Yeah, so you guys, what do you guys think of P1?
So this robot took me a really long time to fully appreciate. When it came on the scene, I saw it and I was like, this is utter garbage. It's like and over time I grew to appreciate this sleek, slick little speedster.
I think that's kind of the story of P1 as well. Like, it really improved, even though like the fundamental design like really hasn't changed a ton. Like, it really improved in how well it did like every season, right? Like, you go from like barely present in 2019 to like just like, you know, with a presence but not doing especially well in like World Championship 5 to being a top 16 robot in World Championship 6. Like, it's a real story of improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I'll do all that while keeping a very solid theme as well. You won't see many robots that have like such a like really well done theme that are like as competitive and came up as much as P1 did.
Oh yeah, the aesthetic of P1 is gorgeous. If you're a race car fan, as much as I am, seeing that teal and orange, that sky blue and the orange with the little one, that's great. With the real tribute to one of the greatest racers of all time, Ken Miles.
It's one of those with the colors. The colors are very purposeful. It's one of them, like, you know, if you know, you know. But even still, even if you're not, you know, too familiar with the choice of colors, obviously it looks like a race car. And, you know, even down to P1's name is, you know, it's racing lingo, isn't it, for for pole position, and you know the theme goes a lot harder than just how it looks.
Very much operated like a race car too. The thing was, it was a little speedster.
It was indeed. Yeah, it's a shame we've got to talk about it in the past tense, really.
Yeah, it seems to have been retired in favor of Diet
Star
Huge.
Child. Yeah, essentially. Technically, Alien Huge, not exactly huge at a different home.
I think
I like that.
Not many robots really lean into like their theme as well as P1. Like, you have a lot of robots and BattleBots that like give themselves a theme, but they don't really have a huge impact on like the actual design and functionality of a robot. Whereas P1 isn't just like themed on a race car; it like is shaped like a race car, you know. And
it basically is a race car.
Yeah, and I really and I think you guys were spot on about how like really elite the aesthetics were. Like, I remember looking at the 2019 roster, and like I was actually really excited to see P1 because I thought it just looked so cool, and I was also really excited to see like a front hinge kind of flipper lifter in the competition.
Not very common in ChattleBots at all.
Not very common in general at all, to be honest. No.
Which is a very sad fact, actually. They're very entertaining.
Yeah,
it's one of them. It's one of them few weapon types that seems more like even despite the nature of the battle box with different hazards and things like that. It seemed like it was a weapon type that was more in with the Robot Wars clan. Obviously, they had like Cassius from the very start, but
and of course,
then you had of course, then you had Firestorm.
Of course,
Mute was the first one to take it high pressure. I remember.
Yeah, later down the line, you'd have Mute, you'd have UFO, you'd have Envy on the live scene, and that's kind of evolved now into your kind of abrasion style lifters and immersion and things like that. China. Yeah, exactly.
I think it is like an inherently difficult to execute weapon type, though.
Absolutely.
Like the advantages you have over your rear hinge flipper are pretty. They're there, but they're small, and the disadvantages are pretty significant. So yeah, it's really cool when robots try it like people.
Yeah, you very much have to build your entire setup around being a front hinge, rather than you could put a front hinge on a box and it will work.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it makes your robot, I think, pretty inherently defensive. Like pretty much any front hinge flipper feels like it only will launch like 4 or 5 weapon attacks in a fight.
That's one of the things
you have to make them count.
I think that's one of the things that P1 actually did really well was because of that disadvantage, the fact that it was such a fast and mobile robot gave it a lot more opportunities to use the weapon, whereas a lot of front hinges are a little more plodding and just kind of wait for the opponent to drive over. So I like that about P1.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, go on.
They didn't seem to be very lenient with how they use their weapon too. We saw in the 2021 season, they fired it right into a very full spun up Valkyrie, which kind of helped.
Oh yeah.
On having a robot that is not afraid to use their weapon into a very dangerous situation. It really helped them kind of.
Like Zassa was saying about it being almost a defensive thing, and this is no criticism of P1 itself or Brandon or anything like that, but it's like putting a shield up in front of your opponents, isn't it? And the fact that it's got that big wedge on the front, it's got the forks to get underneath, it can tank them hits. I mean, less said about maybe Copperhead, the better. But it was able to, tank a lot of hits from a lot of really, dangerous.
Most notably, Hypershock.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Hypershock, dude, nothing to sniff at. That thing hits pretty decently hard.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it absolutely punted it across the arena.
That was the year that it won most destructive.
Yeah, and
that's it.
It may have only been one hit, but what a hit it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was able to take Scorpius to a judge's decision.
I still think it should have won that fight.
Well, maybe let's talk for another episode.
They had 15 more seconds on the clock. Yeah, Scorpius would have been counted out. The judge's decision, too.
I'm definitely not salty because the Scorpius Ice Wave rematch was so bad.
Oh, for real?
I hardly think... I think P1 probably would have just dumpstered Ice Wave quicker, if anything.
I don't think P1 would have made it to the Ice Wave fight. I think it would have been beaten by Hypershock that year again. Anyway,
that would have been a half decent fight.
Dude.
P1 Ice Wave.
Yeah.
I genuinely think it would have tanked the hits and lasted 3 minutes.
I think it would have gone
whether it could flip
similarly to the Whiplash fight if they ended up meeting. There's a few decent hits and then it gets turned over.
I don't
know. I feel like the bracket would have been pretty tragic if P1 had beaten Scorpius. I'm not gonna lie. You're fighting 3 a World Championship 5 versions of P1 and Hypershock, and then an Ice Wave that's just completely outdated and could probably take on Hypershock. But I think the fight against P1 would probably not. It would either be P1 It
wouldn't be. It
pretty
wouldn't be
early
an
or
outdated.
gets wedged around and turned over.
Okay, but it wouldn't be an outdated Ice Wave though, because that was the new version.
Yeah, I mean outdated in terms of like not as good relative to the like.
ICEs are very outdated.
Yeah.
Yes, just the
don't we
era
love
of
'em?
internal combustions. Wait
Let
for that
me have
episode.
this.
Wait for that episode.
Oh my god! And then
Never coming back.
Then the knock-on
Dude.
effect of that would have been that P1, say it beats Scorpios, it wins its bounty.
That would have been insane, especially since it didn't even make the 32 that year.
Yeah,
and then,
suddenly
which is
in
a still
Champions,
highly debated thing as well, if it should have or not.
yeah, but then suddenly in Champions, the Scorpios bracket becomes the P1 bracket, and now we're
I feel
talking.
like-
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna
feel
say
like
that.
you
Then
wish.
we get
Now we're talking
Bloodsport. Then we
P1
get
versus
Bloodsport,
Bloodsport.
probably versus Hypershock and the Golden Bolt, and that sounds like a fun fight compared to the Hypershock Scorpios we got.
Yeah,
That would
Yeah.
also segue
Sure.
into next year. P1 would have fought Bloodsport in the
That's
Bounty
what we're-
final, which
yeah,
would
that's what
also
we're-
be a really good one.
I feel like Bloodsport might win that. The way Bloodsport is like, I think the like wedges that they attach, which generally aren't great, I think they actually might work quite well against a robot that's extremely reliant on getting under like P1, and also like how fast it is. Like Bloodsport is, I think it'd be really hard for P1 to get like a solid drive that it needs to really get points.
And ultimately, like unlike Ice Wave, if it does get a flip in, Bloodsport is likely going to self right.
Yeah.
Or likely going
To be honest,
recover from being
I'm
flipped.
not quite sure, because Bloodsport has consistently had issues with their self-routing. They can, theoretically, but I think it would still be like more debilitating than most robots to get flipped over by P1.
I would imagine.
I don't think P1 would have let
So,
Bloodsport
and again, we're talking
self-right.
2020 Bloodsport.
Yeah, that's what I think. This is 2021.
This is 2021. Well, I mean, that version was still pretty solid.
They weren't able to
Yeah.
self-right on the upper deck against Whiplash.
Yeah, P1 had a few moments with the upper deck, but we'll get to the upper deck later.
Yeah, Bloodsport had that. I always call it the Murr, where you do the tornado Murtha, where you just spin so much that you eventually just self-right yourself. Very, very
Yeah, I mean-
classic tornado Murr. It even looks like tornado Murr. But I doubt if Bloodsport were tipped over by P1, if P1 was smart, it'd probably just keep bullying it, kind of like Whiplash does, and just never give it a breathing room.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust P1 to do that quite as effectively as Whiplash did, though, right? And
No,
like,
probably not.
Yeah,
We're
I wouldn't
so
Probably
thought
not,
so.
yeah.
and
Hard
also
to
like
compare to Whip.
that fight was also like not like Bloodsport was actually okay at getting
That was
away,
quite a
right?
close fight, yeah.
Yeah.
Against
Yeah.
Whiplash.
Was it?
I
Well,
think so.
not,
It was like
not really close, but Bloodsport was doing more damage than we usually see against Whiplash with horizontals.
I don't know.
it was
Its track record against horizontals at that point wasn't terrific.
yeah. I
Although then
suppose.
again, I guess most of those
Tombstone.
horizontals were tombstones. So
It's a difficult one, really,
fair
because
dues.
we saw P1 with the nature of P1 being, a non-kinetic, spinner and things like that. Naturally, we saw it against a lot of spinners. I'm just quickly having a look now, and the only non-spinners it ever fought was Sub-Zero, Lucky.
Yeah,
and
that was the
Extinguisher,
upper deck moment.
and that might actually be it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's almost
In
just
14
kind of,
fights.
that's a pretty like stark ratio.
It
But I
also
suppose
fought,
it's
it
not
also
as
fought the
surprising.
floor at one point. So there's that.
Yeah, but I mean, the
It's
fact
me.
that,
I mean,
a non-damaging robot, inherently a control bot, was able to go 2-1 in, the Fight Night seasons of 2020 and 2021.
And it's not like
really
its
quite
weapon is
impressive.
like super explosive either. It's not
No.
like a Hydra, or
No, it's
very
where it,
tame.
absolutely
Yeah.
punts robots. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if we see any more front hinges in the future, they're gonna kind of trend towards the sort of P1 immersion front ends with the like wide fronts with the wedges and then the electric lifters that are good at pinning robots, rather than the kind of more old school like wedges with the pneumatic flippers. Because I think like the way that front hinges are gonna win, at least nowadays, especially with lots of spinners, is that they're gonna like often try and like high center them in awkward spots, right? And I think that design is pretty good for that. Like we saw that in like the Smee fight is the one that comes to mind. But yeah.
Well, Smee's just such an awkward robot. Most people like for
Smee
better
is
or
also
for worse.
Smee.
I will say this about Smee. When you're fighting it, you do have to do different tactics than just normally because of how weird it is. But the thing with Smee is since it's so weird and just long, most of your whatever tactic you try will probably work unless you're rather incompetent. I don't want to sound like Smee's not a very good robot, but for better or for worse, you do have to do some rethink your strategy a little bit for something that awkward. But
yeah, I mean, naturally, it's not something you're going to fight, you know, in any capacity, unless you literally fight Smee again. There's no real Smee like robots. You know, it's at least with Huge, you've kind of got Starchild, you know, Mammoth, and things like that of the big robots. But in terms of what Smee is, and Smee's a lot of things, chief among which wide. You know, how do you really? And then something that wraps around you as well. Granted, the undercuts weren't very, weren't very damaging, but they hit where you. No, and they didn't stay on all that, strongly.
Yeah.
But, in theory, they'd wrap around and then hit where you're not really expecting.
Well, it did actually do that, like against P1, actually, right? Didn't it, like, kind of half
it
take
kind of sandwiched them, but they did kind of do it, but their undercutters weren't really up to speed at all, so they kind of just wrapped around and ended up getting pushed anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that might have just been that like 2020 version of P1 having some reliability issues or something. Or, like,
it is a really funny sight. It is really funny looking at just the footages of that fight with Smee and seeing just P1 lift it and seeing Smee just kind of like dangle off the sides. It's really funny.
Yeah, Brandon's face was a picture as well immediately after that happened. I don't know if that was, some funky editing or whatever, or if that was just his genuine reaction, but, man, he was everybody when we saw that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely do the same.
It's funny, we were just talking about P1 versus Bloodsport, but another absolutely likely alternate way that could happen is in the like World Championship 5 bracket, right? Because if P1 had got the 31st seed, which it absolutely could have done,
it really should have too.
Then it would have. Wait, was Bloodsport the second seed or third seed? It was second seed.
It was second.
Yeah, then it would have fought Bloodsport, but this time it would have been a year earlier and probably an absolute massacre, to be honest.
Probably.
I still remember being at the round of 16 in 2021 and hearing the MC for the event calling out P1's name as one of the bots appearing in the night. I was like, what the fuck? How did they... what?
Very pleasant surprise.
I thought that was the funniest thing.
Yeah, because I don't know the specifics of the upgrades. I'm sure, Brandon, if you're watching, please enlighten us. But it seemed like a much improved robot, even from 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, and it was weird, right? Because like you couldn't really point to anything particular that it was like even particularly better. It just seemed to work better.
But that's testament to how much it didn't really deviate from its design. It didn't deviate from its aesthetics or its its theme that it had going on. I mean, without having to go at anybody or anything, you do see a lot that are kind of like, they've got this gimmick that gets them in, and then they drop it as soon as, they start getting a bit more competitive, which is great. We want to see robots win. We want to see robots kick some ass.
Forts.
But yeah, it's nice to see a robot that visually hasn't really changed too much and has gotten better through just being more reliable, being better driven, being, presumably easier to work on in the pits, and, little things just being done better.
Yeah, especially a robot that like is so kind of sort of synergistic with its design and its theme in terms of how it looks, right? Like we've seen Witch Doctor, right, change its shape quite a bit over the years, and that's because its shape doesn't really like work with what its theme is like. But if P1 turned up and it was, like suddenly it was Copperhead shaped, then it just wouldn't work as well as it does, Like, I think there really aren't many robots that integrate their theme into their design in a way that P1 does.
Yeah, not anymore. Like even back in as far as I can remember, like maybe Mauler, they always had that really goofy thing going on, but really P1 embraced the whole aesthetic and presentation of BattleBots, which it does feel like it's a dying art of the artistic expression in BattleBots.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the only reboot compared to I can think of that does that is maybe Warhead. Sorry, Money, you ahead.
That's why I want to keep not necessarily built around the theme, but I want to keep Mad Catter for that exact reason. They nail their theme to a T, and they don't necessarily incorporate it into their design per se, but it's such a well executed theme that it kind of feels just part of the robot anyways. I want to keep robots like that. No staleness.
Yeah, it's another one of those. I mean, the lifting arm is great on Mad Catter as well. I mean, if you strip enough away from it, I guess it's a vert. It's a four-wheel drive vert.
Yeah.
Forks and whatnot,
it's if you strip enough away from it, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. But
it is a four-wheel drive vert.
It's incredibly well driven. But it's, Martin's at the helm. Can't go wrong with Martin Mason. And it's beautiful.
Martin is the
technically doesn't have forks.
Let's be real though. The reason Mad Catter is what it is because of Martin Mason.
Martin Mason, absolutely.
When you think of Mad Catter, you don't think of the robot. You think of Martin and his. Oh my god! Just what a wonderful, wonderful personality he puts on TV.
Also got,
he's one of the strongest characters.
The community college aspect to it as well, right? Isn't Mad Catter built on a pretty tight budget compared to most of the other competitors?
Yep. Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, Mad Catter is welded together aluminum in the frame, not like billet, billet or anything, which is fairly cheap compared to everything else. So yeah, it's not exactly a shoestring robot, but it's a bit more tight on its budget than most.
Compared to the tens of thousands a lot of other teams in the same level of competitiveness spend, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Martin does a great job, doing what he does with his wrestling gimmick and everything like that. It's becoming a little bit more like Bot of the Week is Mad Catter now, but last thing I'll say on it is just each time it's got an amazing paint scheme, an amazing look which really lends itself to to that theme, and that massively carries it as well.
Paint just keeps getting better and better with it every year. Like that anti-horizontal plow is just beautiful.
Oh yeah. So is there anybody else got anything to say about P1 apart from Brandon? Please bring it back in some capacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd actually beg to differ with you on that. I don't think it should come back. I think the fact that it went out on a high note, it had its career best, reaching the top 16, beating Hypershock, beating Valkyrie. I think that was as good as it was ever going to do in BattleBots, given how difficult it is for control bots. I think it was the right time for it to retire. I think anything else would have just been.
Yeah,
but I do have to ask: should Starchild actually be the robot to replace it, or would you rather someone else?
I think for me, Starchild going from P1 to Starchild it'd be like I don't know if Mike Tyson retired from boxing and then immediately afterwards said, I don't know, I'm a professional tickler now.
I'm hiring a 4-year-old in my place.
Yeah, it's just so much of a downgrade. It doesn't even really have an aesthetic. It kind of does.
It does.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say,
mean,
does the
does,
I'll give
alien?
it. It has a good aesthetic, but I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't have much else.
I
feel
love
as
that
good
they
as
committed to the bit with the Hawaiian shirt from Alien. That's a really fun detail.
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I'm I'm 50-50 on Star Child because on the one hand, it obviously didn't do what it was supposed to do, and like I'm not sure that it ever will. On the other hand, I can't say that I don't want it compared to what else it could be brought without knowing what else they would
What I
bring.
will say about Star Child, it is a very good jobber robot. The thing does not die, and
yeah,
that will
that's
always
true.
pull in TV views as a robot that
Yeah.
just will allow itself to be not allow itself, but just be beat up and not die. That always gets more like recognition than most fights.
Especially since it takes damage in such an entertaining way, right? With like how the wheels gradually kind of lose integrity throughout a fight.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets this really weird motion. And also, to be fair to Style Child, like they had actually like really tough draws. Like I feel like their only really winnable match that they got in their entire season was Overhaul. Like and arguably Mammoth, but like Mammoth had proven itself to work.
Mammoth in particular has
right?
a very, very favorable matchup against those like really wide robots just because of how much it outreaches them.
I mean, the thing is,
exactly.
huge. Like, I don't think they knew really what to do with Star Child once it arrived. Like, talking about production now, not the team, obviously. It's like, yeah, give it 2 of the big robots. Okay, cool. You know, we'll give it Mammoth, we'll give it Huge. They're a given, but it doesn't. You know, nobody was really ready for what Huge was bringing that year.
I think that
No.
also, in a way, impacted the seeding as well because we saw how Huge did the entire season. If they were given perhaps a tougher opponent and they won, they would have more than likely gotten a higher seed. And who knows, we might have had Huge win instead of Starblaze this time.
That seems unlikely. I think they would have had to meet in the bracket anyway. So
perhaps, although I will say that is a close enough match to where I think it could go, frankly, either way in any given. It's like a 60-40, if you ask me.
Yeah, Huge's like lineup for the Fight Night in World Championship 7 was I don't want to say it was shit, but man, just looking at it's like, huh.
I can't fault them for that too much.
Yeah.
I still think they should have fought Endgame.
Yeah, Huge in previous
If that doesn't
seasons.
happen, if that doesn't happen next season, I'm coming for you.
It absolutely it should, but there's a chance it doesn't, and I will ride if it doesn't.
In fairness of Huge's schedule, right? I don't think we realized that, like, because both Shatter and Blip were like Shatter was okay and Blip looked pretty good coming into the season, and both of them had kind of underwhelming seasons. So, like, I think like that looked like a pretty reasonable schedule going into the season.
Yeah, I'd say that because I get why you say that because Huge in previous seasons, it was a potential machine. It absolutely could have gone all the way, but just, the issues here and there prevented it from going really any farther than like the top 16. They had no idea the monster it would be in season 7, just based off its previous years.
I don't think that its schedule was bad or anything. I'm consistently annoyed that they don't use Huge more often as a, throw it at the verts and see what happens kind of thing, because that's kind of the whole
what it's meant for.
We don't really see that in Fight Night, but then when it was going through the knockouts,
get that you don't want to give someone like just the robots that they're made for, but like I think it would have had great matchups with Jackpot or someone like that.
Yeah, I think so too. Like as soon as it got through the knockouts, we started seeing that yes, it very much could, fight those verts and put up a good fight and win. As soon as it started taking on those not quite so predetermined fights, the ones you have in Fight Night that are pre-selected. As soon as it started just naturally coming up against whoever won from the other side of the bracket, whoever that may be, then we saw that yes, it can beat Scorpios. It can really kick the shit out of Witch Doctor and Mad Catter, and really give Sawblaze a good fight in the final. And
I'm not even concerned about it from Huge's perspective, but I think that throwing, because people complain all the time about too many vertical spinners and I have my own feelings on that. But throwing them a hard counter every now and then to shake things up helps to keep them on their toes, force them to be creative about how they approach their fight night campaign. And
I think
huge is that robot.
To be fair,
I was gonna say, like
you
were talking about throwing these verts hard counters. Huge is kind of the only robot that does that. And actually, this is kind of the issue that Starchild had as well, right? Where where they kind of didn't get thrown any of the verts they wanted. You know, like if they got thrown like Ominous or something, that would have been much more winnable.
I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna criticize Starchild too heavily for not being P1.
No,
I think that is very harsh.
P1
whether that's from a performance perspective, from aesthetics, theme, whatever. It's more just a credit to P1 as to, just to wrap things around again, how strong that theme was and how much and how competitive the robot became. Yeah, exactly. And when I say that I want it to return, I don't necessarily mean in a main BattleBot season. I'd love to just see it at Proving Grounds. I'd love to just see it maybe at RoboGames.
Oh, I was just going to say that. It would have been great at Robo.
I feel like
right at home at
the amount of robots that get stuck on the wall. Oh my god, it would win the whole thing.
We could bring it to Mechmania. Just let it have some fun outside of BattleBots.
P1, I feel, would be a rather good robot for Destruct-a-thon. Obviously, it would need to be scaled up to just be able to do anything. Because, we all see how Whiplash does whenever it tries to use
I wasn't going to say anything, but
it's already a tanky robot, so
good.
Why not? Let's make it a showbot. Why not? It's another different weapon type. It's a very strong theme that the audience can get behind, and if you've got some of the actors, some of the team from there that can really play into the race car theme,
back just because they already have the racing thing going. But
do they? Well, can they not just do something else?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure something out if that happens.
Well, that's why you make them fight.
I don't see it happening. It would be cool. Though.
It would be really cool.
Theme for Whiplash. That would be fun.
Well, but now that we're back on the subject of P1 and its legacy, I believe we have another segment to introduce.
We do indeed. You may remember this if you've seen Robot Wars before. They had a side event called the Challenge Belt, whereby the belt, per se, would be given to a specific team for a very credible reason, much like Behemoth. And the point is that you would fight and defend it. So, obviously, we can't make anybody fight anybody on this podcast. But
not with that attitude.
Well, maybe. Well, I don't know. Might kick a few people out of the call. But we can fantasize. We can we can talk about things. So what better robot to give the challenge belt to than our bot of the week, P1? So the way this works, we've got 3 robots that we have randomly drawn. They have been drawn already, and we're going to discuss how well we think P1 would do in those fights. It's got fight 1, fight 2, and fight 3. If it wins its fight, it keeps the belt. It defends its belt. If it loses, then it relinquishes its belt to whoever it's lost to, and that robot will get it instead for future fights.
Hopefully, the ones you've drawn are actually like modern robots, because I know when
they're all reboot.
Oh, they are.
Like, okay, it comes up against like, oh fucking no, like mouse trap or fucking like tornado.
No.
I don't want to hear the mouse.
We separated it out by modern and classic, I think. So
yeah,
tornado's technically modern.
I guess tornado is technically modern, but like, it
wouldn't be the most outlandish classic bot to win. Let's put it that way.
Herbinator or some shit.
Right. So what I'm going to do. So P1 is our holder. Gonna go one by one once I tell everybody who the first fight is against. And uninterrupted, I want to hear everybody's opinion and everybody's vote on who it would be, and then we'll move on. Okay. There's 5 of us here. There's no reason for draws. So let's go. The first robot for P1 to fight and try and defend its belt is Mecha Rampage.
Oh dear.
CloneKiller, what do you think?
Okay. Mecha Rampage is... It's the perfect robot for P1 to fight. It's big, wide, not very fast. P1 can run laps around it, just scoop it up and bully it. I mean, maybe Mecha Rampage's spinner can do something, but P1 can take a lot of punishment. I see this as an easy W for P1.
Yeah, I have to agree. We've seen how we see how it fared against Valkyrie. And to be fair, if Valkyrie is a litmus test for P1, it survived that. It survived Scorpius. It survived Sawblaze, even though it didn't win those fights. There's no reason Mecha Rampage will give it any problems, and I think it would just get stacked up against the wall like Whiplash did.
Oh, for sure.
Really talks. What do you think?
I think, it would go almost exactly like the Whiplash fight, if not faster, because even like P1 is in even better shape to go against it than Whiplash was at this point. Like it gets sent up into the air and propped up against the wall in, I think, like sub 30 seconds.
Yeah, so that is our 3-0. We'll hear from Zassa as well, just in case you feel like being a bit of a contrarian.
Silencing Nametab.
Oh, what is this?
He doesn't deserve an opinion.
All right, Zassa, what do you think that we'll get to Nametab?
All right. Yeah, no, I think Mecha Rampage is just like I like the robot. I think it's a fun take on a horizontal, but it has very little recourse against control bots, and P1 should just smother it pretty easily. Like it took on Valkyrie, it can handle Mecha Rampage. So I think it's pretty open shut.
Dudes, Nametab, anything to add?
Not really too much, to be honest. I think you guys covered it pretty well. Yeah, I think P1 just kind of scoops it up pretty easily, wheels off the floor, stacks it against the wall. Shouldn't be an issue.
Okie dokie. So yeah, that's
This
a pretty
the
clear
most modern
5-0
arena
win for P1. Hey?
Is this the most modern arena for BattleBots? That we're hypothetically thinking of?
Yeah,
probably.
sure.
Let's
just
say
say
Robot Wars Arena.
Well, that just knocked 15 seconds off the knockout timer.
That's a 5-0 win for P1. The next robot is Plan X.
Oh God!
Good lord.
Okay, this is probably even less fun. Like Plan X is so big. Like we know Plan X can't self-right. P1's just gonna scoop it up and just dump it. This is gonna be it'd be really funny to watch, almost like the Plan X versus Bronco, where it just ends so quickly. But it's just not as silly. Like there's no explosive flips. P1's just gonna shove it around. It might look ridiculous, but my God, this is a miserable fight for Plan X.
Yeah, again, I have to agree. I do actually think it would last longer than Mecha Rampage. I don't know if that's controversial or not.
Probably.
Plan X was a massive robot. Plan X was really big.
It died in the screws. That's all.
I would say it lasts longer just based on the fact that it's a very hard robot to strand. It would last not long at all, though. It would top like 45 seconds.
I don't know.
If it goes a minute, I'll clap.
I think unless it died on its own, I think genuinely it could last maybe a minute and a half.
I'm thinking it gets put on the screws and much like the Bronco fight, just dies.
I think if we're talking
on the top, I can see what will happen is Plan X gets stuck in between, on the upper deck where it's just dangling there at an angle.
Yeah, I mean this is the thing. It's not a robot that's built with the upper deck in mind, so. I that's what I think the KO condition would be, that it would get beached or stuck on the screws of the upper deck or something like that, or kind of hanging off
on its own mini bot.
Yeah, like how P1's itself has lost before, Yeah. Money Talk, what do you think?
What I said earlier. It's like it might last a little longer than Mecha Rampage. It's still a sub-minute knockout.
Fair enough. We'll go for Nametab first this time.
Yeah, I think this is a fairly sad fight, to be honest. Like, I think P1 just shoves it around. I'm not sure, like, how much, like, the little wing things on Planet, how much, like, they would hold up. Like, if P1 tried to topple it sideways, if they would, like, stop it getting turned over or just kind of crumple and die. But yeah, honestly, like, obviously P1 completely dominates this, but, like, the screws in 2015 didn't reverse, right? So, like, isn't that how Planets died? It's been a while since I watched that.
Well, FedEx also was like just upside down on top of them.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, yeah. I think it just gets kind of shoved around there. I can honestly see it surviving to the judges, just not doing anything with it. It's like it's like a Hydra versus Black Dragon type judge's decision.
Yeah. It's just 3 minutes of P1 just shoving this mangled aluminum blob all around the arena.
And then losing on damage because Plan X gets one hit in with its downward facing spinner.
I love ABC judging.
Oh my god.
Oh, Zassa, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I do. Plan X was really, 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 really not good. I think
polarizing info.
I think P1 could, go into the fight with half their drive down and no weapon and probably still win. So
fair enough. That's another 5-0 sweep for P1 anyway. And our third fight, you guys actually called it earlier. It is Gigabyte.
Wait, really?
This is a very good one on paper.
Let's talk about this one.
This one's an actual fight. It's not just P1.
Big question. Who is driving Gigabyte?
Okay.
We could just talk about both scenarios, maybe.
I was gonna say it would be most current version, wouldn't it? So it'd be Derek.
Okay.
Yeah, let's say Derek's driving it.
All right.
If you're watching.
It just immediately shows
the moment he asked who's driving, I could hear the squinting. I'm just like,
okay, so how do I?
He's hearing it. He's just like, shit, not good.
Let's just say Parks is driving it.
So it doesn't even show up.
That's true.
No. We'll say Derek's driving it in the interest of fairness.
Okay, so
whatever that means.
I am a hardcore Megabyte fan. I love Megabyte it's such a beautiful robot. Gigabyte, I have a lot of opinions on Gigabyte compared to Megabyte. But versus P1, this is a fight I could probably think about for a long time. It could go one of two ways. Gigabyte either gets some really lucky shots and it just wins on damage, or P1 can actually sponge the hits and get just be fast enough to bully Gigabyte with its. Gigabyte's really big, so I can see P1 kind of bullying it, or Gigabyte getting stuck in a very awkward spot. But there's definitely going to be a lot of sparks.
Yeah, I mean, granted, this was this was the most recent version of P1. After I was just going to compare it to the Valkyrie fight again. Looking at how P1 looked afterwards, it really didn't look that bad. Like, okay, it got a lot of scratches on its front plow, but
it is big to note. It also lost, I believe, half of its drive as well.
It did lose a wheel, yeah. It did lose a wheel as well. But in terms of it survived. It survived the entire fight.
It very much did.
It was struggling, towards the end, but it lasted. It avoided a knockout. It got the unanimous decision, which, if it can tank anything similar to that, we could be talking a really good fight. I think it would, because Gigabyte, we know when it hits things on when it hits a plow or a big, angled wedge or something like that. It gets deflected. It can go flying. You've seen how it was against free shipping last season. So it really could go one or two ways. But P1 is, especially its the most recent version that we saw before it retired, really could tank them big hits. So I think it would be one of those real slugfests where P1, it would take a hell of a lot of damage, and that may well be the deciding factor. But I don't think Gigabyte would come out of it unscathed either.
No.
I do think, unfortunately, though, Gigabyte would win.
I
wouldn't call that unfortunately. I like both of them.
I can accept that. Just
in terms of it being our bot of the week,
just based on the way modern judging criteria is, and damage is the deciding factor, I can see Gigabyte getting the W. But man, it'll be one of those P1 was robbed, Reddit outrage, everyone on Facebook, hashtag.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Hashtag what, like justice for P1 type deals.
If I had a nickel that justice for every time justice for P1 was called, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice.
Well, you'd have 1 nickel and then 1 like hypothetical nickel.
So an NFT nickel.
Yeah.
What the fight I would compare this mostly to is actually, I would say Gigabyte versus Tantrum is the fight I would compare this to mostly on how I think it would go. I think Gigabyte gets sent around quite a bit, but it also, in the process, really, really cripples P1 just off the residual damage of it being Gigabyte. And I think both of them end up limping to the bell. But I think P1 showed a bit more it was more susceptible to damage than Tantrum. I think that would decide it for Gigabyte in a really, really close fight.
Tantrum does.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, in that fight, Tantrum didn't really itself do much damage to Gigabyte. Like, Gigabyte more so just kind of died after like a big thunderclaps of hits, mostly generated by itself. But I think it would go to Gigabyte in the end, just off the fact that P1's a bit less tanky than Tantrum was.
Yeah. It's a really difficult one to call because we've never seen Gigabyte take on a front hinge flipper. And
actually, we have.
Oh, are we going to be thrown back to 2006?
Joke's on you, because they did fight Snake 2.0 in China in 2019. And
that was Megabyte, though. That wasn't Gigabyte.
It was 2019 Megabyte. That's the same thing.
Totally different robots, Zassa. Come on.
And we're not going to talk about how that fight went. But they did, in fact, fight a front hinge. So, suck it, Blue.
I think if we're most recent versions and most recent drivers, I think P1 takes it.
If we're talking most recent drivers, probably.
Yeah. If it was like John driving, you have a different story. But
that's a big difference maker for me. I think with Derek driving, I think P1's going to be able to keep it slowed, keep it smothered, and I think it's also worth noting that unless at least in BattleBots, Gigabyte's never actually beaten anything triangular. I think also P1's a really.
Do we count Smee as a triangle? All I'm saying, it's mostly wedge.
But yeah, honestly, I think P1's geometry is actually better to fight Gigabyte than Tantrum was. Tantrum's got the wedge, but it's got it's got the low bit and then the really steep bit. And I think the really steep bit was a really good.
The main thing that got caught.
That got caught on Gigabyte's meaty teeth. But P1's just flat, so it's just gonna skim over the top. So I think P1 controls like a Derek-driven Gigabyte fairly easily. John, I can see like what Money talked about. How like it could be a close fight and then Gigabyte maybe wins on damage or something. I think it's definitely a closer fight if John's driving, and maybe Gigabyte comes on top because after like riding over the top and then catching them on the side. But I don't think that'll happen if Derek's driving.
What if we factor in the spatula if John is driving? I genuinely think that could be a big thing.
I think if they use the spatula, they're more likely to lose, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. Don't do that.
Yeah.
We are not spatula believers here.
My stance is I think Derek's a better driver than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah,
we see that in the lower weight classes.
I think that, obviously John having 20 years of experience driving shells, speaks quite a lot. But I think a lot of people, when they think of Derek driving Gigabyte, they're still thinking of that first free shipping fight. Even just across the 2 weeks of filming, he got a lot better. You can see that by the end.
He did.
There's a reason John
like the death row fight, the free shipping rematch, all that.
Yeah. And there's a reason John picked.
And since then, he's had a
very
at destruct-a-thon.
I will say the very underrated aspect of kind of what did Gigabyte in this year is, dare I say, the weapon operation. That thing never got turned off, which is what I believe made the self-riding pole. Like we saw in the free shipping fight, it died because it was spinning too fast. It bent it whenever it landed on it. I think that is a very underrated aspect.
Was a Triton thing, but that wasn't.
Yeah, I will say the weapon operation was a big part in why I think Gigabyte kind of fell off this year.
And that is reportedly no longer an issue. So
yeah. I hope it gets better. I genuinely hope it gets better for Gigabyte. They're one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're talking the most recent version of Gigabyte, then it's only fair, really, to be talking about the Proving Ground version, not what we saw in Season 7.
That's very true. That's very true.
I'll be honest.
That version did beat Doom. It did beat Jackpot.
I will say, versus Jackpot, though, it was a double knockout and a absolute thunderclap of a hit. In all fairness,
yeah, and to be fair, on decisions like that, how much gravitas we actually give into Destruct-a-thon wins.
I mean, even like a double knockout against Jackpot is impressive, right?
Oh yeah,
it is. It was impressive.
What I don't think was impressive, however, was their showing against Doom. I do not think that was very impressive.
Demolished it.
Not much you can do about the weapon motor thing, but. That's for those at home who haven't seen the side op footage of Jackpot versus Gigabyte. When Gigabyte hits the wall and it it flexes the wall and it causes a controller sitting on one of the pulverizer panels to fly back like 20 feet. You should go watch that because it's insane.
It's actually one of the biggest hits in like as far as I can remember.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, just
probably one of the closest times we've come to a breach in the last couple of years. That stuff's scary.
All I'm saying, if this was the Robo Games arena, someone would have died.
Yeah, probably.
Gigabyte just keeps going into the arena.
And if anybody hasn't seen Doom versus Gigabyte, don't.
Not missing much.
Carnage. If you like one-sided miserable carnage, I guess you're good. But man, it looks.
That wasn't
if
even
you
carnage.
have masochistic tendencies, then yeah, go ahead. But
or if you just really
people,
like, if you just really like Gigabyte, you just want to see it kill
so
something.
ready for Doom to win that the moment Gigabyte's weapon stopped. I was like, Lord.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't even say Gigabyte killed it per se. Doom very much killed itself.
Yeah.
It threw its armor off.
I'm looking at the gifs now on the Wiki of it.
Function.
Like a sea cucumber, it tosses its guts out at you when it's threatened.
That would be a decent theme for a robot, actually. Sea cucumber.
But it
probably not actually.
If you like crash test
I'm
dummy.
surprised that no one brought up since we're talking Gigabyte P1. I would love to see what happens because I think Gigabyte's going to ramp over P1 a lot. I want to see what happens when it lands on P1 and Brandon just yeets with the lifter and tips it up and it lands on P1.
I'm not sure he would do that because, like, with the Valkyrie one, wasn't it? He was like on the other side and he was trying to flip it. He didn't directly do the. Maybe I'm misremembering the fight, but
no. He did a couple times, at least once or twice, when Valkyrie rode up on top of them and he lifted it up into the weapon. And that was part of why P1 ended up taking so much damage. I think was because Valkyrie was hitting it at weird angles.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, when it gets lifted, it's not going to be like a Valkyrie Whiplash situation where it gets lifted up and it's like balancing on the lifter. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, he'd grab it by the weapon,
which in part is the nature of front hinge flippers. But yeah, I really don't know. But I'm edging towards Gigabyte. If you guys,
I'm leaning Gigabyte.
I can accept a Gigabyte win just because of how important damage is in the modern era. This is classic era. I think based on classic era judging, P1 would have won, but based on modern era judging, I think it goes to Gigabyte.
Yeah. Any votes for P1?
Me. I'm sticking P1.
What about you, Zassa?
I can accept a P1, but
I'm pretty heavily on Team Gigabyte here. I think if it goes to the judges, damage is an advantage. B, if it doesn't go to the judges, it is 90% sure to be P1 that was KO'd. Again, damage. C, I think that the spatula, everyone else kind of poo-pooed it. I think it would be pretty important. Most of the failures that we've seen from it recently have been it getting fed into a vert.
Yeah.
And P1 is not a vert.
No.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
well, I don't know about that one.
I don't know, Brandon. Please let us know if P1 is a vert or not.
It has wheels. It's a vert.
Right. Okay.
But
so
I would give it to Gigabyte about 65-35 would be my odds.
Probably a little heavier than that, but yeah, Gigabyte.
Definitely Gigabyte.
Okay, so that means that Gigabyte is our new challenge belt holder. Sorry, Brandon. Sorry, P1. That is the way it goes. So yeah, whenever we do this again, we'll be talking about Gigabyte and putting Gigabyte up against 3 opponents. Will it keep its belt?
Nice.
Stay tuned. Who knows? That'll be another episode, though. For now, we've got something slightly different. So, yeah, we've got a tier list for you guys to work your way through. And it's actually going to be ranking not the robots, but the arena. So, no, we
KingOfBots Arena S tier. Will not hear
actually.
So yeah, not necessarily the arena, but the hazards within them. So,
oh boy,
we are going to be talking about just the major ones, not really like the little ones that nobody really cares about.
Do the house robots count as a hazard?
No.
Okay.
Maybe another day if we don't cover everything.
Yeah, maybe we'll rank the house robots or something one day. Maybe like 20 episodes from now. I don't know. We'll see on that one. Yeah, for now.
Horribly
S tier. No. Be nice to Cassius Chrome.
No, I am. I'm saying it's gonna tank in the ranking, and people will be wrong for that. It was fantastic. It was hideous. I love it.
Did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. He just did
it. Ready for that tangent on the Sentinel.
Lord.
Man.
I prefer the Sentinel to Cassius Chrome, I'm be real.
Dang, that's a hot take.
Alright, that's probably for another episode though. And for this episode, we're going to be talking we're going to be counting the Sentinel as a house robot rather than a hazard. So, where do we want to kick things off then? Should we talk about the battle box?
Yeah.
It feels like the best place to start. It's the most well known.
Okay, so pulverizers. What are we thinking, guys?
Okay. Pulverizers. They're hit or miss. They're basically just there to score points.
They are literally hit or miss.
I do have a relationship with these things. They're fucking like they were fun in the old school era because you had the lightweights and they actually did something to some of the lightweights. Like if you did the fight with Monster Mick a Catbot where it's just mangled from the pulverizer, or Stewbot, my beloved, getting hit by the pulverizer once and just getting obliterated.
Oh, who remembers Ra?
I love that shot. I love
Little
that
drummer boy getting demolished by it was nice.
Yeah. So the old school pulverizer actually did something. New school pulverizers where there's only heavyweights. I can't think of a single time they actually did damage.
I will say an underrated aspect of the pulverizers. I don't expect them to do damage anymore, but what I do give them credit for is they are good at pinning things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. I
So
think
Jack,
that's
Jack Barker disliked this comment.
That's what I think their primary function is now.
I feel like there's a bit of a resurgence in pulverizer usage lately, in terms of like pinning them, and now they're like the £100, aren't they? The hammerheads.
I mean, we have the pulverizer operator in here.
Yep.
Yeah. They are really good at pinning. So I think we saw it last season. The one that stands out to me was when Death Roll was going up against Switchback. And it had Switchback pinned under that hammer just to line up another big shot just before it, the KO was called. And, it is one of the things you just like, yeah, it's possible, but, it's really impressive to see it happen. And I think that was a bit of an underrated aspect of last season.
Another one was, ironically enough, Death Roll versus Cobalt. Death Roll was absolutely hung up on that pulverizer for so long. Like, gave Cobalt free reign to just pick away at it.
Yeah.
They also did
pulverizer taketh, the pulverizer giveth.
Yeah, I think that didn't Quantum get. I don't know if it was a pin or maybe just like a really good hit on Black Dragon in that fight, which was a pretty fun one. But yeah,
I feel like it did in that corner. I feel like it did. I'd have to rewatch, but
I think if we're gonna slap them in a tier, I'd perhaps suggest B, because they're not like outwardly like super flashy and they're quite inconsistent, but they do occasionally have like cool moments like we've just discussed, even if it's not really in the way as intended. They kind of do cool things, but they're not like super flashy or work in.
They're very good baseline.
So I give them like B.
Yeah, I would agree with B.
Yeah, B sounds good. I think the underrated aspect of the pulverizer is that they're a consistent reminder to the audience that the arena is dangerous. Like, the screws, obviously, when you run into them, but they're so limited because of, like, where they are and trying to get people into them. Whereas the pulverizers hit directly into the arena, and the kill saws only come up in the last, like, minute. So.
Yeah,
they come up anyways.
We're aware that the pulverizers don't necessarily do as much damage as they used to, but your average casual fan might not know that. So that's still that element of exciting.
I know a lot of fans complain about how the hammers don't do anything at all, but I'm sure that there are some fans out there who hear this is a 100-pound hammer and they see it smack the robot and do absolutely nothing, and they go, "Huh, these things are pretty tough."
That's fair.
Yeah.
Rather than these hammers are shit.
Yeah.
All right. So is that a pulverizer in B? What are we going to
get? They're also just really fun to fire.
Yeah, they do.
I'm sure.
We're going to do kill source next then.
It's a good feat.
Yeah, sure. Let's do the kill source. I can see
B for pulverizers in the B tier. That's acceptable.
Right, so for me, kill source.
Love hate.
Love hate. I mean, look, they will throw sparks everywhere with the right, the right robot, the right materials, things like that. They are still a spectacle, but no, I think they're just a carryover, really. Now, I think from the early seasons of Comedy Central.
I have a question. Are we including, like, are we counting them in both the classic and modern era context? Or are we just thinking about them in the modern era?
So
both the classic as well. With the classic, I feel like they're A,
Yeah.
Because they were so
classic era kill saws were so hilarious,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
Monster
can
Mecha
actually do
Chatbot
damage.
touching the kill saws, and then it just goes flying like a frisbee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
There's
That
also
was great.
the elephant in the room that a lot of people complained about in recent seasons, where the kill saw slots themselves being more of a
Oh, with the
hazard than the
forks,
kill
yeah.
saws.
That's a good mechanic, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think that's something I'm glad is in the battle box. I think
You know what?
something that limits
Yeah.
forks like that is probably beneficial.
I absolutely agree. I think there needs to be an Achilles heel to those forks that are being literally spammed everywhere.
I think there is a healthier way to do it, but it is like one of the only ways to combat them right now, other than just slapping forks on your own robot.
Yeah.
I
mean,
don't like it. I don't like it when they decide a fight, like you get stuck
Endgame
in
versus
there, and that's
Ripperoni.
no, not even that. When they get stuck in there, and that's it. That's the count out. They're immobile.
I also think
I
of
don't mind it so
boxing,
much if they're stuck
boxing
in the kill
champion.
source.
P versus Deep Six.
Yeah, but if they're stuck in the kill source and okay, the other robot gets a big hit on them, that's fair game. You know, that's part of what you get with the kill source. I get that.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
don't
like,
mind that at all.
That's
the risk reward.
Deep Six versus Smee. Is that? I think that is that the only time where, like, in like the last few years, where like someone's got stuck in the kill source slots and been outright KO'd from it. Like we had, like, you know, Ribot get stuck, but then actually won the fight. We had Endgame get stuck, but then like Ripperoni did a lot of damage and freed them and still won anyway. Is Deep Six the only robot that's actually got stuck and KO'd?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that was something to do though with the I'm trying to think now. The forks were made, or the big long stabilizer things, they were made to the width of the old kill source, but then they were widened to put them sparklers in to shoot during the whole
I remember hearing
the
about that,
main
yeah.
events, you know, and all that. And then Deep Six. I don't think the builders were told about that. I seem to remember that being a thing. I can't, correct me if I'm wrong. Any builders that are, you know, any builders that are watching, if there are any. But I think that was a thing that the builders just weren't told about the kill source slots being widened, and
Yeah,
that's why the Deep Six thing
I
happened.
remember Ray making a comment about that because that was how Tombstone got stuck.
Yeah.
And Mammoth.
And then after that, Deep Six had them widened kind of things at the end of the fork, so it wouldn't happen again.
And just so happened, that's when Deep Six started to go absolutely insane.
Yeah. What could have been?
Well,
There's another
should we
robot when
count
they come back.
boxing champion losing? Because they didn't necessarily get counted out in the kill saws, but they lost almost
they
entirely
did.
because of them.
Well,
They
it's
did?
worth saying before we talk about boxing
Yeah, 'cause they
champion
couldn't
and
get
like
out.
that. It's
I
worth
thought they
saying
did
that
like
King
get
of Bots.
flipped over after.
Nope.
Doing the King of Bots ones in the same.
Yeah, I was going to say
category
it's
as
worth
Battlebots ones?
remembering
Like,
that
I
it's
think
worth
they should
remembering
say-
that King of Bots did have kill source as well
Oh,
in their arena.
yeah.
They were
Quote-unquote
slightly
kill
different.
saws.
Yeah, they were just called saws, I think. But Zassa would know more than me on this.
I don't know if they had an official name for. The only one that I know has like a commonly used name that isn't just ported over from BattleBots is or
Right,
from Robot
okay.
Wars or whatever is the grinders.
Yeah, because it's one of those things. I think that the saws themselves were spaced a little bit further apart than in
Yeah.
BattleBot. Just going by images of, you know, just things like that. The King of Bots wiki's got a good reference there and a good write up on all the arena hazards, things like that. So that, I think the picture that they used specifically was Spectre against Boxing Champion, and you could see the kind of gap in between each individual saw. So I suppose that's an interesting thing. Maybe it helps carry robots around a little bit more rather than them being really close together. But still, there's still slots. There's still, you know, that inherent chance of robots getting stuck in them and that deciding a fight.
But then, well, I suppose you had Black Rabbit get stuck in them as well, didn't you? That was kind of less of a cool.
Yeah, they did.
Because like fork punishing is cool, but it's not like Black Rabbit had like loads of really long forks. They had like 2 very small ones, and like I suppose that's still being punished for forks. But like I know if maybe they took the King of Bots aspect, King of Bots kill source take that aspect of like punishing forks maybe a little bit too far. But either way, I would still have either if it's just the BattleBots ones or if we're including King of Bots, I would still put them in A.
For me personally, I would say yes, kill saws in the early days, and I'm talking, the 1999 events as well, where robots were really
I'm
shittily
factoring in
armored.
the early events. Yeah.
There was some good armor back then, but yeah, they were definitely more. They did more like they cut through biohazard type. Well, was it Titanium season 1? But there's like a hole in biohazard from season 1 from the kill saws. There's holes in Punjar from the kill saws. There's many instances of the kill saws actually damaging something in the early classic era.
Yeah. And the thing is, unlike the pulverizers, they don't really have a secondary function apart from the kill saw slots, which is not really an intended. Well, maybe it is more so nowadays, but like especially in the ABC seasons, I don't think anyone was thinking, "Oh yeah, them kill saw slots that'll get some wedges stuck, some forks stuck."
Yeah.
And actually, tell you what, we talk about the kill saws like they never do any damage in the modern era, but they've done things like we had the rotator tire shredding, which was pretty sick.
That was what I was going to bring up as my go-to for why their existence is justified is Rotator Petunia, because that fight was incredible.
They are also just like when the kill saws themselves, they are like a very wow, they actually use them. That's actually cool kind of thing whenever they happen. Because they are becoming more rare as the seasons go on. Like you call it out every time you see the kill saws pop up in a fight. I think they should keep it sort of for that aspect too, and because it is another kind of helpful thing for control bots, both the slots and the saws themselves. They're themselves. They really they've cemented themselves in the battle ox.
One thing I wish robots did, like they did in the old school areas, is when like a control bot pinned or grabbed another one, they drag them into the kill saws for damage points. You don't really see that anymore.
Because they're random.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they're only active in like the final minute of the fight, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yep. So that was why the Petunia thing stuck out so much, was because they had to try like 4 different times to actually get it to happen.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The highlights, it's got its highlights. There's a lot to do. Where does it?
I'm thinking B.
For now, though.
I'm thinking C personally, just because I don't know. I'm a weirdo and I dislike the way they interact with forks. I know a lot of people have touted they nerf forks. They keep everyone
from running. Healthier way to do it.
Well, I don't think that should happen. Period. I think that the more you try to nerf forks, the more you just make it worse for everybody, because people are going to run them regardless. There's very little there's the downsides of struggling on the floor are, not as good as the upsides of actually being able to hit your opponent or stop them from hitting you. And all the saw slots do in that regard, rather than nerfing them, is just mean that people have to drive more carefully, and that slows down fights. And every now and then slow fights can be good. They feel more tactical. I'm one of those weirdos who really liked Hydra versus Robot 2 last year.
That was pretty decent.
But I think that limiting where robots can drive in the arena is a negative thing, and I think a lot of people feel this way because we hear it all the time when it comes to the shelf, and people complain about that to no end. And I think the kill saw slots are mostly the same thing, but people are okay with them because the nerf that they feel it offers is, in their mind, more directed towards the dominant robot type.
Is it that there's more intention in what the upper deck provides compared to, the kill saw slots being a byproduct of another hazard? Or the same hazard, I suppose.
I was going to say, obviously the kill saw slots weren't designed for robots to get stuck in them.
No.
But
definitely not when they were widened.
but I think that most people acknowledge that that's the bigger use for them nowadays, or like the bigger thing that they do, because they're not hurting most people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get it. It's yeah.
But I think that having them there to slow down fights and just make it more awkward to drive. And like this is something that I really started thinking about during Banshee versus Lucky here at Proving Grounds a couple months ago, where Lucky was running a bunch of forks and really just hitting every single saw slot, and it wasn't getting stuck,
I
and
remember.
it wasn't like messing itself up, but it was making it damn near impossible for it to drive anywhere. And because it couldn't beat Banshee's forks, which were wider and therefore not getting stuck, and they were longer, it had to try to maneuver around Banshee without being able to drive in like a quarter of the arena. And it was just so frustrating to watch it be unable to mount any offense because of that.
Yeah,
I think that was where I started to really realize, like, we don't need to nerf forks because everyone's going to do it anyway. Just let the robots fight.
I think ultimately, just to kind of close out on kill source before we give a final vote, it's just one of them things. If they were stripped from the arena, we would really notice it.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
We would massively notice it, and probably for the worse.
Yeah, it'd be like removing the pit from Robot Wars. BattleBots just kind of needs the kill saws. They've been around since day one, and
don't say the P word in front of Zassa, please.
We're gonna have to talk about it eventually.
Well, do we have to? I might just kick him from his. No. No, we will get there. We will get there. So what do we think then? Is B fair?
I think.
Yeah, I want to give them an A. I love those kill saws. They're one of the more iconic BattleBot hazards, second only to Pulverizer. But I do like what they've turned into as like a sort of like a utility and like an actual like floor hazard you have to avoid, like a literal hazard. But
yeah,
really, I want to say A, but realistically, I think they belong in B.
I'll say B.
I think that's fair because we've had some A shouts, we've had some C shouts, we've had some B shouts. Let's go for B. Do we think ahead of Pulverizers or?
Definitely.
I would put them below.
Me too. I think the Pulverizers just are that iconic. They're in all the merchandise as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kill tools are better than the Pulverizers, but I don't think the margin is that big. So yeah, I think it makes sense for overall the Pulverizers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see more teams try and use the Pulverizers in a kind of controlling sense. Not something you can do with the kill saws or the slots. And especially if the proposed upgrades happen with the Pulverizer heads.
Oh.
Whole thing with, the whole thing being teased by Trey about teams being able to put,
Oh, don't even get me started on that.
I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but
I really wonder whether he realizes people are just going to stick spinners on the end of it and call it a day. I don't know if he's quite put that together yet.
I'm sure it's crossed his mind. We'll ask Greg at some point. Just ask him, what Trey's rationale is on that.
I don't know. I get where his head's at, and I think in like the US Robot Wars era and like older stuff before that was figured out, it would have been a really fun idea to have people stick, funny props on or weirdly designed hammers. You get someone smacking someone else with like a steel cactus. That would be really funny.
You see someone like putting like a giant middle finger or something.
Yeah, exactly. You get some weird
fish.
You get some weird shit.
That'd be kind of fun. I think if you keep it to that rule where it just has to be something
I think it would be terrific at like a lower weight class that has more of a fun vibe. Like I know like BBB Bristol Bot Builders doesn't have arena hammers, but if they did, they would be the ones that I'd want to see like do something like that, because I think people would show up with really funny attachments.
I mean, they've got some
but-
really funky hazards, you know, just
Yeah.
on some of their arenas. Craig
They
was
have-
showing
they
me
have a-
earlier
they have
about,
a-
like,
They have a boat on wheels as a house robot. They're doing great.
yeah, I know all about that boat on wheels.
I fucking love boat. It's so big and stupid.
Craig was showing me yesterday. Craig was showing me yesterday in Uta that they had, you know, the little Hot Wheels booster things you used to get.
Oh
Yeah.
like, the zippers.
Yeah. A few of those, so the robots would go through and go. Nyam. I don't know if that
Blades.
actually happened, but in theory, that's incredible.
Oh, that's cute. I love
Yeah.
stuff
I mean,
like
for
that.
me, that's an easy S tier, but yeah, just thought that deserved a mention.
But yeah, I think
Kill Saw is B.
a competition like BattleBots where it's much more competitive and people are blowing however many thousands of dollars just to be there.
Have we had a
you
robot
know,
cost $100,000 yet? I feel like we're getting there.
Maybe if we put all the
if we're,
ballasts
if
together.
I was gonna say if we're counting spares, probably I'm sure we've had one or two, but I
It's
don't think a
difficult to
single
determine
robot has
cost of
cost
a BattleBot,
100,000
though.
yet.
Yeah.
It's so hard to determine cost.
Yeah.
You know,
I
so
think
much
if like
of it is.
if the Wyachis didn't own so much of their like shop stuff, maybe Hydra would be edging close to it. I think, but
That's true, yeah.
Like you've got a lot of robots where if one team built it, it might be twice as much. You know,
versus another.
it might cost twice as much. Yeah, exactly. Like obviously the team will actually stuff. They can do so much of it in house. You know, it's crazy.
Mhm.
And a lot of teams outsource to them as well for parts and switches and machine parts. I know. I don't know why it crosses my mind, but Roundhouse, their weapon was done by Team Waiachi, I think. But yeah.
Alright.
So yeah, we'll stick Kill Saws at B then, shall we? And
Yeah,
let's
Kill
move
Saws
on
at B.
to-
Are we doing some of the other wacky classic era BattleBot hazards now?
We might leave
Yeah, the
some of them
ramrods.
actually, because there were some that
Yeah,
were just bizarre.
I think
The floor spinner designed to disorient a robot.
Yeah,
Oh
the
my
one that did like
Ramrods.
nothing to any of
It
them.
wasn't
genuinely-
strong enough to spin 220. It spun the little guys around, but it couldn't spin 220-pound robots around, so it just like hipped them slightly, and now they're just slightly a different angle.
We'll get to floor spinners because Robot Wars have that as well.
Yeah, it did like
but
nothing at 100 kilos.
For now, we'll go for the screws.
Oh boy, these are a hot commodity, I guess. How do I
are
describe
a
the
very good one.
screws? They're definitely like I can't see any other sport like they feel like such a BattleBot thing. They're so like even in the early days, they just look so wacky. Like this weird combine thing that just how do I just like
I'm gonna give a ranking real quick and just see where everyone else's heads at. A tier, S tier if we count the KOB drones, because those things were
Yes.
amazing.
yeah.
The Beatmo ones are good too.
So for reference, I'm edging towards keeping the King of Bots grinders separate.
Okay.
That's fair.
They're quite different.
Just because, yes, functionally they are very similar. The actual thing that is spinning is.
That's why I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So I think the screws are pretty great. I think the only issue that I have with them is that like every now and then they get jammed and can't spit a robot out, which
or just
is a shame. Sometimes it's a cool way to end a fight, but like
Have you seen that photo of like they have like just racks and racks of screws?
Oh yeah, you can walk by them in the pits at
there's just like hundreds. There's just like 20 of them just on this. It's really funny. Like because in the old BattleBots, they just had one. They had like one or two pairs of screws, and they barely got changed, so they looked pretty beaten. But
nowadays they need a whole bunch because you have Will Bales running head first into them, and a whole bunch of other incidents going on, breaking the screw.
Scorpio says major beef with them.
I think Jackpot's done that.
I do quite like the screws. They feel like such a BattleBot thing. Like you're not going to see that like on like Bitva Robotov or anything. They're so just
they have them there.
yeah. I like as I was saying that I'm like, oh wait, they do have those now. Yeah, they do have.
They're actually quite good too. They do quite a bit of damage.
I was thinking like old school Bitva, like pre-COVID Bitva Robotov with that arena.
Yeah, I think
the screws are exactly what you want from them, to be honest. Like there's inherent risk to like going near them, but you have to like push someone into them. But it's not like a guarantee. But they're not consistently having massive impact on a fight. But occasionally they really can mess you up. I think that's like the right kind of balance. I think my only issue with the screws is they tend to suck a lot of time out of fights. Because we often have to do the thing where you put them on the screws and then they get screwed, and that's the cool bit. But then they get stuck there, and then we have to wait like 20 seconds for the screws to reverse, and it can slow fights down a bit. It's still ultimately like a good hazard in terms of its impact. So yeah, that's why I agree with Zassa's A ranking. But
I can accept an A.
I'm thinking A.
I'd be interested to see how much of that gets edited out of in production.
Yeah,
of robots struggling on the screws, and then
And for such a culture thing for just robot combat in general, because as we just said, like now a lot of other like competitions have screws. Like Bitva Robotov infamously didn't have money hazards, and now they've got like screws and many other stuff. King of Bots has those grinder things, which were inspired by the screws.
Fight Fest over here has something very similar, like some kind of a shredder.
There's all like just such a culture thing. I think the screws become like the thing in a battle box type arena.
Would you want the screws to be damaging?
Not really.
In this era?
No, I think
I think they're already damaging enough. Like they can definitely scratch up tires pretty well.
Uh-huh.
And they can eat away at different pieces of armor. So I think they're fine as is.
Yeah.
If they went any faster to do more damage, I think they would lose their utility as like a control hazard. You push someone into it, and they get launched away, and then you lose your position.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think you want it to be something that would knock somebody else out.
Yeah,
I think
they already do kind of do that.
Any hazard that can like directly knock someone out without insane amounts of luck is not a favorable hazard in my opinion.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that in a little bit, I'm sure.
I can't wait for the heated stuff about that one.
We will.
Boy.
I'm thinking A.
I can accept an A tier for the screws.
I'd say A as well. We've got to give something not a B.
That's a unanimous I think.
Are we gonna count the wall spikes and the rails as two different things?
Probably. I mean,
are they even really hazards?
They counted them as hazards in old school BattleBox. Like they counted the spike strip.
Did used to do a lot of shit.
They were really annoying back in old school BattleBox. You had people getting snagged on them, but.
Well, yeah, but at that point, are we counting like the door ramp as a hazard? Because people got stuck on that all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Do we count
both? They do call it out whenever someone gets taken into the rails and stuff.
No, I'm definitely not mad about Ziggo getting stuck there. What are you talking about?
The lightweights, especially, like, those spike strips were not designed with lightweights in mind. I swear.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Should we just count the big boys then?
They're pretty funny looking, though. I did quite like the spike strip, although they were not very practical.
Yeah, so I think really, apart from the elephant in the room in terms of the modern battle box, everything else is just kind of a bit here and there,
They're just kind of there. Yeah, you're not gonna.
Don't diss the Hellraisers.
I was just going to say, actually, I just saw them. Let's talk about the Hellraisers.
Can we put them in F, please?
The goofy floor flippers.
I did not like them.
They exist.
They were there.
Not anymore.
Yeah, they were there. They were kind of like once in a while they result like the way that if you don't know a little bit of trivia about Nightmare versus Sonowayachi is someone hit the wrong button and the Hellraisers went up, and that's what gave Nightmare that little airtime.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That wasn't even
I remember
intentional.
seeing that.
Yep.
Someone hit the button wrong. I think they were supposed to activate a different hazard, but they hit the Hellraiser instead, and that's what gave Nightmare that little airtime, which I don't know if that contributed to that glorious hit or not, but it certainly happened.
If it did, then that might be enough for me to raise it from F. But
They just
I don't
got
even
I'm
think.
thinking
Have
D.
we ever even seen them used in like a mainline reboot fight that isn't a basement fight?
No, I don't. I
We
thought they
see-
were
really.
removed.
We see
Like,
we see them pop up every now and then. I think.
They're
Oh,
welded
yeah.
shut now.
The fact
They're
that you have to
welded
say
shut.
"I think" is
Yeah,
enough to
now
put it
they're-
really
yeah.
low.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would give them a D, but they did have a few moments in Classic Era which did contribute to some fun stuff, like most infamously Crash Test Dummy doing push-ups when the Hellraiser kept hitting it on the floor. That was
I don't know if you've seen the Complete Control Razorback grudge match
uh-huh.
I've seen bits
from
and
like
pieces
season
of it.
1.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
little bits of it.
Hellraisers
Like-
went crazy in that fight,
Yeah.
and for no reason.
I think they're
And
just
they
like, we
did-
have to use the Hellraisers. They were from
Oh
old
yeah,
school
we paid
BattleBots.
for them. We'll use them.
Yeah.
No, but they did absolutely nothing. And in the
No.
Death Roll Rumble, I want to say as well, in season 2,
Oh yeah.
they were quite crazy there as well. And again,
Yeah.
did not very much. So, yeah.
I feel like if they were like, I don't know, if you put like one of them in the corner or somewhere, like maybe put one on the upper deck and make a team member control it, maybe that would be kind of interesting.
Could be cool. I like that idea.
But
I'd like to
that's
see them
just,
do something with that, with the
Surely-
with the surface of the upper deck, but we'll get to the upper deck in a moment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should we put the Hellraisers away and go to the upper deck then?
Yeah, let's stop avoiding it.
yeah. So wait, where are we putting the Hellraisers at? Like
Can't
D?
avoid it. It's so fucking
yeah,
massive.
we'll call Hellraisers the D.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the whole point. You can't avoid it.
All right.
Upper deck time, baby.
The upper deck.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, when this thing first was announced, like when they first unveiled, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's so claustrophobic. It adds extra corners. I hated it when it first revealed, and over time, it's kind of grown on me. I don't hate it anymore, but I don't know. I think I'd need another season with it to fully cement my opinion on it. But I think when it really it has gotten, I've gotten more comfortable with it, but it definitely does add a lot of like it adds more corners for people to get stuck in and pinned in, which I think is the main. And every time I watch my dad, he keeps asking me, do you get like points or something with the upper deck? What's with the flashing lights?
I mean,
I
that's
have
one aspect of it I do
personal
like. I
beef
do
with
really
this
enjoy
shit.
the fact that a robot can be put up there and in, the 20-second count, I think it is, that
Yep.
can be the end of the fight.
Yeah.
But it's not too dissimilar to, now with the mobility rule. But then again, no, because the mobility rules are what they are now, that any mobility is good mobility.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you can get counted out on the upper deck for something that you wouldn't get counted out for on the main arena floor, if you see what I'm saying, that's a bit of jeopardy that you didn't get in like
Yeah.
season 6, for example, but you got in season 7 because of the new mobility rules.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
so that's
Ripperoni would have
something.
made it to the decision if that was not in place.
Yeah.
I have personal beef with this thing because
Yeah.
it has been a absolute nightmare for horizontal spinners. My personal favorite weapon type. It is like just a big kick in the dick for horizontals. If you
I swear.
we've seen it like countless times now. A horizontal gets punted into the short corners, and they might as well just call it quits there.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very unhealthy thing to just be put in a certain side of the arena, and you might as well just be dead instantly.
Yeah. I mean, for my favorite type of robot and robot combat, the flipper, the upper deck gives flippers like a goal. Like, yes, I'm going to flip you up there now, but I do think
The thing
it's very
is,
love-hate
Verts
with
can do that a lot better.
It's true. Yeah. Just there's so many things with the upper deck. I have a big love-hate relationship with it, as I've said. I I still don't know how I feel about it. Some days I'm like, fuck that thing, get it out of here. Other days I'm like, that's kind of cool.
I think it's very much. I think the massive issue with it is kind of like Money said, where it's just an unnecessary massive nerf for like horizontal spinners, right?
The thing is, it was meant to
you
be a control robot thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
but
and it's cool for
it's
that.
kind of just it's just another buff to verts at this point because
Yeah.
well, obviously verts are going to dominate anyways, but it's just another big thing they can put you on top of, displace you and stuff.
Well, I mean, I would say it does actually like buff control bots maybe slightly more because they can do kind of interesting placements and type things. But the difference is between how much it buffs them and how much it buffs verts is pretty marginal, to be honest. And I don't think like it's not like verts and control bots were massively struggling in like 2020, 2019 before it was introduced. Like just give me some Uta zones or something, right? Like and that way you don't have to absolutely like massively nerf really like a pretty unique weapon type in horizontal spin. There's nothing really fights like a horizontal spin. And so definitely probably a sort of C or maybe probably a C for me because I do like what they do for control bots.
I can accept that.
For me,
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, for me, the concept is fine. And that might, cause some controversy, whatever. I think the concept is fine. The execution, and by which I mean the geometry, more so than the rules, is completely whack. Like, the fact that it creates those short corners is insane. The fact that it takes up that much of the arena is wild.
Yeah.
And because it's such an expensive thing and such a big thing, it's a bit of an oopsie now that it's like, okay, didn't quite get the reaction we wanted from it. Can't do anything about it. It's here to stay.
Yeah.
You've got to take the whole roof off the battle box or something crazy like that. I think Kyle or Craig or somebody like that said. Just to be able to take out the upper deck, which, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think it's here to stay. I think the geometry could be worked on. Either just commit to making it like the entire end of that arena, end of that side of the arena, so extend it to the walls. I don't know. Get rid of the short corners. Or,
I like that.
I don't know.
Maybe kind of push it into the wall a bit more and then make it and then wider so it doesn't make those corners, right? So it's still maybe a similar amount of area, but doesn't make those corners.
Yeah.
I think my main issue with it is that proportional to the problems it causes with the how much of the arena it takes up and all that jazz, people getting stuck in it. It doesn't do anything special to justify that. Like, yes, you get counted out on it a little bit faster, but 9 times out of 10, if you're getting counted out up on the shelf, you would have been counted out on the floor anyway. Like, you probably were not mobile enough to keep going, or if you were,
more of a thing for season
if you were, they were just gonna like hit you again, and then you would be dead.
Maybe. So I think that's an important nuance to kind of distinguish between season 6 and season 7 with the mobility rules, like I say.
Well, yeah, the mobility rules changed, but like think about it. For you to get counted out up there and not down on the regular floor, you either have to be in a really precarious position where you're like stuck with one wheel hanging off and one wheel on, but not enough to drive, or you have to be limping and make it to the bell while you're up there. Like we brought up the Ripperoni thing. At which point you would have just been saved by the bell, because if you're struggling that much at the end of the fight, your opponent probably was just going to keep hitting you until you were done or the fight was over.
I don't know. It's the difference between, like, obviously if a robot's on the floor, yes, it's it's a sitting duck to be hit. Same can't be said of if a robot's on the upper deck. But any mobility is good mobility now. So if and a robot gets counted out on the upper deck for any mobility, as long as they're not escaping it. So I don't quite agree with the whole aspect of it's 6 and 2 3s as to whether they're getting counted out on the floor or on the deck.
I don't think there's enough benefit in, like, if we were seeing more shelf KOs as a result of bots, being up there and struggling to find a way down for whatever reason, maybe it would have more benefit, or maybe that would suck more. I don't know.
I can count twice the amount of times I've genuinely guessed at an upper deck moment. It was 1, Gigabyte using it to spin up against Tantrum. That was pretty hype. And 2 was Huge's victory dance, which realistically could have been done just anywhere. But the overwhelming majority of the time, when I see the upper deck used, I'm not excited. I just sigh.
Yeah.
It's gotten weird where pretty much the only thing justifying its existence at this point is Bronco being able to jump on it at a destruct-a-thon, and that's the big thing that Trey cites is people love seeing this, and this is great. Yeah, it's a really
Banshee
cool
can do that
maneuver.
too. Banshee can do that too.
Banshee's done it too, but Bronco's
Huge
doing
just
it every
crawling
night.
up it, Huge just walking onto
but
it.
That's I worry that singular thing that only a handful of fans are really getting the opportunity to see in person.
And that only a handful of robots can even do.
Yeah, is going to be justification for keeping the hazard there.
What is otherwise a very annoying hazard more than anything.
Yeah,
Not a good annoying either.
Yes,
what I will say,
it's very much like the kill saw slots in that the amount of space that it makes unusable for many robots is not justified by what it actually brings to a fight in terms of entertainment value. I think it should go. I know it's not going to go because it's welded into the floor and Trey loves it, but I think it should go. So.
What I will say is I think, like I say, the concept is okay, the execution is bad. I think the rules need to be changed to some degree to say if you're on it, the count starts from the moment that you're on it. And I know other people have echoed that view as well. Less of this 10-second count and then a 10-second count. So I think you're given 20 seconds, aren't you, to show mobility?
That was 30 seconds.
Or it might be 20 before
no.
I'm trying to think if it's 20 with the count or without the count.
It ranges between 20 and 30 depending on the situation.
Oh, really? It's not.
Well, it ranges between 10 and 30 realistically, because if you fucking explode and stop moving instantly,
Rampage.
It's gonna take them 2 seconds to decide a count out needs to start.
Maybe give them an extra 10. I don't know.
Yeah,
I need to see some movement. He says to
That
the thing that's just a smoldering blob.
He says the Gigabyte.
You're not gonna get Vanquish versus Ice Wave and then looking at it and going "Hey, can you move? Are you going?"
I need to see some movement, Vanquish. Where's your movement?
Because that's that's as close as you get to a tap out at that point.
Yeah, I suppose.
Stop moving, John.
Literally just you would stop. They just stop moving. There's oh, we're done, and they just didn't move Gigabyte.
Yeah.
I think if the mobility rules on there was changed so that it was as soon as you were up there, a 10 count started, it would be a frantic, decision then. Well, not decision, obviously decisions to get off the deck, but it'd be a frantic reaction then to get off. You got a lot, and I think you'd see a lot more immobilizations on there, which may justify it.
To some degree, I kind of agree. I think it would instill a lot more panic and oh shit, we need to get off this thing. On the other hand, I don't think that would come across well on TV because time works differently. If we bring things back to 2019, we had that whole witch doctor death roll thing that that kicked off because the TV cut was different than what actually happened in terms of how long Witch Doctor was immobile. And people
Tombstone
were really mad.
Doctor as well.
Yeah, that was another one. People were really mad about those because the time in real life didn't line up with the time in the TV cut. But
a similar thing
I
with
think,
the.
I think we'd have a reverse of that with the shelf, where it would maybe seem more dramatic in the here and now than watching it on TV, because there's not a lot happening when one bot is elevated from the other, and they can't attack each other for the most part. Obviously, a couple of robots can get up there, and if Huge ever shelf somebody, God fucking help them trying to run away from that. that would be really funny to watch.
I suppose one thing with the insta count out thing is that if something like Huge did, or Banshee, or not Bronco, they're retired, but if something like that did jump on they would have to start getting counted out as well, which
they have a limited space to attack in, and
that would be complicated, unnecessarily complicated.
Maybe
and we already know that fans go crazy when something isn't quite depicted on TV as it is, in the actual recording.
They also go crazy whenever rules are a little bent.
Or even implemented.
Not sure they would react well if they hey, how is this robot allowed to go on the upper deck and spin off?
Oh man, yeah, if Huge ever starts doing that as a tactic where it drives up there for a couple seconds to get the weapon.
I'd like to see
get so many angry motherfuckers in the face.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine.
For every time Huge was involved in a controversy, I would have one nickel and one hypothetical NFT nickel.
I would have a shit ton of nickels.
You'd have like $1. You'd have many, many nickels for the amount of times people.
I would have enough nickels to fill a sock and beat a man to death.
Wow.
That is tempting when people talk about Huge.
That might be the quote of the episode.
Oh, for real.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of them that needs. Sorry, Nametab, go on.
I was just thinking about what you said about robots being immobilized on top of it, right? Maybe and it not being clear if when they come off. Maybe if the maybe I'm just spending Trey's money here, but if barriers came up on the sides when the 10 seconds were up, so they were physically trapped there.
Ooh, like the opposite of Relatica.
Maybe. Having said that, even if that was in place, though,
it'd be very expensive to put in.
Yeah, it's expensive to put in, and it's not really worth
was the upper deck.
More than the cost. There's a reason they backed off the original idea of having it surrounded on all sides by screws and stuff. Because if you limit the ways that bots can get off, then it just becomes
you can trap them.
Yeah,
you can just guard the exit.
Imagine getting up on the shelf and the barriers come up, and you are facing down a fully spun up, Hypershock or Endgame or whoever's sitting at the bottom there, and all they have to do is position themselves between the two sets of screws and wait for you to commit to one of them, point at that, and drive forward.
Yeah. I mean, you would have 20 seconds before the barriers came up was the idea, right? So I think it wouldn't be
but if you land upside down, or if you do have hindered mobility, and yes, it would lead to more shelf countouts, but I think it would just I think it would be too much at that point.
That's fair. I think I was more thinking of how to make the hazard more impactful, but I'm not sure that's actually necessary.
The hazard is impactful in all the wrong ways.
I think it is hard to make it impactful without making it deathly impactful, just due to the nature of the hazard. And I think it would go from too little to too much very quickly.
Yeah, it's a very fine line, and as much as I would also like to see some the floor space, I suppose, implemented on top of the upper deck. Kind of utilized a little bit better. I don't know what with.
If you put a floor flipper in there,
flamethrowers, why not? Flamethrowers.
Yeah, because one of the big issues with floor flippers is if someone hits it from behind or something while it's up. But they can't do that on the upper deck because there's only one robot up there, and you can't really get behind the flipper. So.
I mean,
that's why I said earlier you should put the Hellraisers, put a Hellraiser on the upper deck. Or something up there.
Something I've dreamt about, and it's totally non-function. It's totally something that can't happen. But I always imagine a floor flipper on a turret on a turntable, so that the teams can choose where they want to aim their robots to be flipped off the upper deck.
Fun idea, except it'd be impossible to like design.
Oh,
So
absolutely
really
impossible. I don't think it could happen for a moment.
my dream hazard for the upper deck actually would be a drop zone. I think that would be really funny.
Oh yeah.
But
You
And I tell you
get
what,
someone up there, and while they're struggling to find a way off, a washing machine or a bunch of bowling balls fall on them.
for all
Just
this
that-
talk about
that
custom
added bit of
hammerheads on the all this talk about
pressure
custom
and-
hammerheads on the pulverizers, I think that's the way they should go. The teams
Oh,
just
like put
Destruct-a-thon?
custom ideas on the upper
yeah,
deck.
put a mystery thing. I don't know what. The teams both have something, and maybe split it half and half so that both teams submit an idea, and then depending on which robot is actually above the drop zone, the other team's half of whatever's in there is I don't know.
For our drop zone hazard, we put a spun up deep six in the ceiling. Have
Here comes
fun.
the force with a steel chair.
Yeah, Ray would just stick the mortician in there and call it a day.
Last
like
rites
to-
finally
I like
has some
to-
use.
I
You're like,
like
what's
to
that
think
whirring? What's
that,
that death hum from the drop zone?
Brian Nave just takes an old shredderator and throws it up there.
we see the mortician like just miss and end up impaled blade first in the upper deck.
I would
Big
kill
deal
the-
style.
It's just there now. Hey, new hazard. Oh my god!
Sadly, all the hypotheticals cannot fix this. Admitted, or like at the end of the day, very annoying hazard more than anything.
Yeah.
It goes in
sure.
like D or C. It's just
I'd say
I would-
C personally.
I would put it in F.
I would put it in D.
Wow.
I'm saying D.
a
Like,
D
I-
sounds fine.
I give it a C or D. I'm happy with D. Yeah, if people are generally pretty down
Yeah,
on it.
I'm okay with D. It's more so like on the pretense of what it could be if a few things are tweaked. Rules and mobilization
I still don't
stability.
think I don't think there's anything that can properly save the upper deck, unfortunately.
Yeah, not to bring it into, like,
I
A
see
or
where
B
they were
tier.
going with it. I don't think it applies the way they want it to, and I don't think it's ever going to fit the style of show that they're going for.
I had the opposite thing
Okay.
of Clone whenever she first saw it. Whenever I first saw it, I was like, "Holy shit, this thing looks cool!" And then I saw how it absolutely demolished Gigabyte versus Uppercut, and I just, I was like, "Okay, never mind. This thing sucks."
I hated it. Like at first, I thought it was just kind of stupid, and then I heard all the builders responding to it and going, "Wait a minute, what is this? We didn't hear about this."
I
And
also
honestly,
hate it just because it is the focal point of most like big arguments that happen now.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
It's worth knowing that like robots have been designed with the upper deck in mind over the last few seasons. Well, over the last season especially.
Literally just last
Malice,
season.
I remember, was supposed to be a lot longer than it actually is.
Yeah, I was just
They
reading that they
nearly
wanted to
just gave up
redesign Malice,
and
but
they nearly just gave up and repainted Bite Force. They were so upset about it.
Which, I understand. Thankfully it doesn't. I don't think they actually committed to, getting parts and things like that bought for this elongated new Malice design. I don't think. Might be wrong on that, but I know that was a big example of a robot that had to be redesigned massively. Due to the
I feel like
introduction
if you have to do that on principle, the hazard is not good.
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion we've come
If
to.
teams are genuinely considering, wow, we might need to like just straight up redesign a robot based around this one hazard, it's a fundamentally bad hazard.
I mean,
yeah.
by contrast, Deep Six, they just put little feet things on their forks, and that wasn't an issue again with the kill source slots. Whereas you can't just
the kill cells, you only have to redesign like small parts of your robot. Like
yeah,
you just
exactly.
have to widen forks or figure out a new ground game or whatever you have to do.
You can do that on site.
And
The
also,
shelf is very different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
also
yeah.
like again, the kill source slot punishes something that's like done by the top robots, where a lot of the top robots, whereas the like upper deck punishes a type of robot that isn't really that top tier to begin with, especially like since like 2020 and onwards.
And I mean, I don't think that was the intention. Again, like Zassa said before, that it was, it was kind of pitched as this is going to really help control bots, and it just hasn't. I mean, whenever I think of a fight that P1, for example, harking back to our bot of the week, has lost, I think of the ones like against Lucky, where it got stuck on the upper deck, ironically.
Yeah, the only, I was going to say, the one that I think of with them is they managed to get half of Jaeger
on there.
Yeah.
And I remember because I was there for that fight, and I remember watching it. That was, I think, the first time I saw anyone use the upper deck. I was like, wow, this is anticlimactic as fuck.
I know Hijinks got snuck up there against Sawblaze, I think, as well. And yeah, that was, I think it did. It was like hanging off the edge.
I honestly don't remember.
I'm sure.
Yeah, like I said earlier,
happened.
the only time I was excited to see the upper deck be used was Gigabyte being up there unintentionally to spin up in Huge doing their victory dance, which realistically could have been done anywhere.
Yeah.
He also had
Huge
like
being able to crawl
sending
on the
itself
upper
into
deck
the
is
ceiling
really
against
funny.
Defender was pretty funny.
That was hilarious, yeah, I will admit.
Like the shelf has had moments that are likable, but it's just it's not enough to compensate for the downsides of it. And when it is used in the way it is intended to be used, it is just not a very interesting hazard. Even if you make the count out immediate and they start giving you 15 seconds, let's call it, from the moment you're on there, and if you don't get off in that time, you're done. It's still just, it wouldn't be that exciting because it's like, yes, they're in a death zone, but it's not visibly dangerous. People are just watching it and seeing, oh, they're in this, like it's like if you painted a corner of the arena and said, by the way, if you drive into this, you have 10 seconds or you're eliminated. Most people watching it would be like, why? That's stupid. Why is that corner death?
Yeah,
I get that. I get that.
That was kind of the idea behind like my barriers idea, but but yeah, I suppose, but that's probably pretty unfeasible. Are we kind of done with the battle box then? Have we got everything?
I think that's everything.
Every big one.
Yeah. Are we?
I mean,
we're gonna go.
Sure. I don't really want to talk about like the paddles and the pistons for like.
Those aren't really.
The 4 dildos.
Hey. But yeah,
there's something to stick on a pulverizer.
Way. Probably will happen as well if Craig Danby fancies it. He would be the one to do it, I'm sure.
I think I want to see if they ever allow the custom pulverizers. I want to see a Slammo Hypershock rematch where Craig just attaches hot glue guns to the pulverizer.
Yeah. Oh no, Will Bales would stick a rake on the pulverizer. Let's be real.
I mean, who am I kidding? It would obviously be Jake Hewitt that would put that on there first. Then it would be Craig.
The bad dragon sponsorship.
We got to make use of it somehow.
So now we're on to Robot Wars, right?
So we're calling D for upper deck.
Yeah. Let's just do the pit first. D for upper deck.
Let's go for back to back for fucking controversial hazards.
Okay, I'm gonna start with this is a hot take. I love the pit. I think it is a very cool, very silly, very unique idea for a way to get a wedge or a control bot to knock out an opponent. I have loved the pit since I first saw it. I think it's really interesting and adds a whole other dimension of hazard to the arena.
Yeah, like I will hold off on the majority of my argument until Zassa's been.
I just want to put that out there. I love the pit and I will defend it to this day. I think it's super cool and leads to a lot of really memorable and silly moments.
Early day pit, and I'm talking series 2, 3, 4, not so much of a big fan of. As soon as they had a activation device,
the button,
exactly, the button, the bumper, whatever it is, that the teams then decide when it is in play or not, bang, game changer. Suddenly it becomes, for me, a really good hazard.
I think the pit is not only a fantastic win condition, I think the show kind of integrated it well for the stage robot combat was at, right? Because you had in the early series, it was pretty much open all the time, because often you wanted a way to end fights quickly, because so many of the robots were bad quality, and you needed a way to end the fights, right? And if the robots got better, you have a pit release button to because the robots have got better, and you want to make it. You don't want to have a fight between two robots and then someone gets pitted too often. You don't want that too often. But if it happens occasionally, it's really fun and hype. And then in the reboot, you saw more robots are getting better. We make the pit less accessible again with the change of the tire, and I think that's a good way. I think you want to keep the pit as a win con difficult to activate. So like maybe nowadays you would have it kind of like the kill source, only in the last minute, and maybe you still have to release it or something. But
I can accept that.
As something for control bots to win fights in an era where you can't KO robots just by like moving them around. I think a pit is really fantastic to have, and definitely a positive to any arena. Well, I'm sure we're gonna have some different opinions.
Yeah. All right, Zassa, just unload it, bro. Just blow the load.
His veins are popping.
Yeah, you get these.
Like I mentioned in the shelf segment, I'm not a fan of instant death hazards, and there's occasional exceptions to this. Like I like UDA zones generally, or at least the ones you have to work for. Looking at you, Robots Live. But pits are it's a hole in the floor, which isn't really that interesting to watch. I do think when we were talking about the presentation of it on Robot Wars, I think that was good. Like smoke coming out of it, Jonathan Pierce screaming about how this hole was instant death. I think they did a good job of at least making a hole in the floor intimidating in that regard.
That's
and
the
I do
pit of Oblivion's view.
Yeah, exactly. and I do
Thank
think
you.
that for the first couple series, it was a good implementation. It was a good idea to reduce the amount of shit boxes bumping into each other for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they sorely needed a way for robots to kill each other more reliably. And there have been like interesting outcomes from pittings, whether that's Panic Attack pitting Cassius to win a huge upset in Series 2, Behemoth doing it to Apollo in Series 10, which was amazing.
Was real hype.
That was beautiful.
And
then Behemoth then being victimized against Nuts, which was really funny and led to possibly the best upset ever in the sport. Or even just silly stuff like Killer Hurts driving into it because John Reed forgot it was there. Like that was common.
I didn't know the pit was there.
Yeah, but I think those kinds of instant death hazards are really bad, and I think the biggest example, and I know people are going to shit on me for this because I've been very critical of this robot before and I've gotten flack for it. Tough as Nails was the turning point for me where it really became a bad hazard, not just a kind of lame one. Tough as Nails was the first one to really just optimize, go for the button, grab the opponent, get them in. And we saw that like versus Gravity. I think that was the World Championship, right?
Yeah, it was the World Championship where they just dumped Gravity in the pit.
Gravity would have been a much more interesting robot to watch fight some of the other competitors in there.
A really good flipper on Gravity, but
seeing it just immediately pincered and pushed in the pit, and that was that. No fanfare, no nothing. Like efficient, yes, great, good on them for coming up with that solution. But it was not interesting to watch in the slightest, and importantly, it couldn't really do anything if it couldn't get you in the pit. They had to fight with, was it Robo Chicken, where they were struggling to get it in the pit, and like it wasn't doing anything except holding Robo Chicken at bay, and that was not interesting to watch. And I think that once we started getting bots who were really optimized for pittings, that made it extremely bad. I do kind of like what some people have done, whether it's, there's a bunch of like Beetle and Feather events where the pit is on a delay. You can only activate it a minute or a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the fight, which that makes it a lot better because then it's not just an instant like push them into this hole and hope for the best kind of thing.
Sure.
You have to plan around, surviving the fight and not being in a bad enough condition that you can't do it. You have to plan around a whole bunch of stuff, and I think that's a lot better. I'm still not a big fan of pits in any context. I think it's too easy for someone to fall in accidentally, and for someone to get a cheesy push. And there's been fights that I've seen, not many, but a couple where, like they have the arena they use for all the UK Beetle stuff, where it's like in the corner but not quite, and someone will land behind it after the button is pushed, or they'll wind up there somehow, and they'll like sit and wait because they don't want to try to move around it and get knocked in. Their opponent doesn't want to come to them, and I think it's the same thing as the kill saw slots in the shelf, where it delays fights, and I'm not a fan of that. So, for a lot of reasons, I don't like pits. I think
much more reasonable than I was expecting, to be honest.
Yeah, I was expecting like a full bore, like 2 hour, this ruined my life, I have PTSD and never will recover sob story of how much the pit is your ultimate like misery.
I think it's definitely in the modern era of heavyweights specifically. I think it is probably the worst hazard in any arena. I did kind of like the This Is Fighting Robots pit because you had to fall down it twice to get knocked out, and I like that because it helps to prevent the accidental bouncing in problem a little bit.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like I think there's only so much you can do to make it not a hole in the floor.
I understand your opinion. I do disagree with
first?
You go ahead.
Go on, Clone.
Okay. I disagree with your opinion, but I definitely see where you're coming from. The pit did come with a lot, and Tough as Nails really did like become the optimal how to abuse the pit, but in a way that's kind of cool because it invented its own new strategy. It's not a wedge, it's not a flipper, it's not just a spinner, it's its own grabbing device specifically designed for pits, which is, I mean, lo and behold, that's something new. It's a very new take on a control bot.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if Classic Robot Wars went on for another couple of seasons if they would have done something to the rule set to prevent that from being such a problem in future seasons. Like a delay.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what they did in Series 9, right? Like, they had lots of pittings in Series 8, so they were like, okay, we'll make it so that half the time you press the button, you don't get the pit. I think,
I did kind of like the dial of
Tough as Nails for a bit as well, actually, because, it might be a strategy that, like, isn't too... Actually, no, it's even quite flashy, actually. I think it's really dramatic when a robot is in the claws, and it's like, are they going to be able to escape? Are they going to be able to push back? And I don't think it's like, I don't know, it's not like it's incredibly consistent either, right? Like,
I would agree with you on that. If it could do anything else when it had an opponent grabbed, it couldn't do anything else.
Actually, it could. You were wrong about that. In the Robo Chicken fight, it couldn't get Robo Chicken in the pit, so instead it pushed them to the house robots. The arena still has other hazards in it that it can make use of. Yeah.
No, that's the problem. If it couldn't push you in the pit, that meant it couldn't push you. That was the problem.
I think the thing that Zassa's getting at is that the fact that was their plan A, and that is an instant KO win. Pushing the robot into the house robots is a plan B, and it's something looks good in the eyes of the judges.
It is essentially if you had like a claw viper or other kind of grabber lifter whose very first game plan was to scoop the opponent up, drive to an Uda zone, and dump it out. And that was like 10 seconds. If we don't get this, the fight is going to drag on.
I think though, like I don't want to kind of. It's difficult. The examples that you gave about Tough as Nails doing it, I think it only really did it like twice successfully.
It did, but it was mostly because it wasn't successful at doing it to other people. It's just I don't like that there are any strategies that can be consistently attempted that are just instant. Like if anyone was able to consistently line up like immediate Uda shots and go for them, whether or not they were hitting them, I would be very against that.
I get that. That's not so much an issue of the pit or of Tough as Nails. It's a concept that you don't like.
Yeah, it was more just
it kind of facilitates that in the way that it's implemented in Classic Robot Wars.
It's a general problem, and they were just like the main ways to go about it, and the main people doing it.
Yeah.
They were symptoms of the problem rather than the problem itself, but they were the biggest symptoms. And if you can't cure the problem, obviously they weren't going to take the pit out after however many series. Get rid of the symptoms rather than the problem, I guess.
I mean, I would
rather just not have pits.
Things there were so many robots that made incredible use of the pit during their fights, that I feel it's unfair to get rid of the pit rather than, the culprit in terms of that. Because look how many, especially Classic Robot Wars. I mean, Classic BattleBots was blessed in the fact that they didn't have to televise like 80% of their fights.
Oh god! Imagine watching fucking like the Paralyzer Pete versus one of those shitters, or like
exactly the
JC Slammer versus
God. It can be a really interesting fight.
The sheer amount of terrible robots though that were in preliminary fights that we don't even know about, and it's probably for the better because they didn't have a win condition like the pit. That could just end a fight. And the thing is, with the pit, it means that no fight ever is a 100-0. At any given time,
I don't agree with that statement.
No?
Yeah, no. I think there will always be 100-0 fights. Pretty much across. Like, I think maybe the first couple of events of any given scene, sure. Even the best robot of a given era or given field will have some issues, particularly as they're figuring out reliability stuff. But like once you started having Razor work well, once you had Tornado, aside from like the one or two times it broke down, once you had these robots showing up, there was no realistic chance of some of the true shit bots
who could hardly even move,
beating them, even if you have Uda zones, even if you have a pit. You have to rely on a John Reed moment of, George Francis driving Chaos 2 down the pit by accident because he didn't see it there. For it to lose against, some true bottom tier like Barry or whatever the fuck.
Barry.
I couldn't think. I don't know enough shitter robots in Series 4 Barrys, or my brain goes for really, really bad robots.
Come on, we got the fucking Fat Boy 10.
Tom, the legend.
Sure.
How many do you
Fat
want?
Boy 10. You can just that's the best.
Take whichever pick, but
was Predator Series 4 or was that Series 3?
Yeah, it was Series 4.
Predator, yeah. Bolt from the Blue.
I don't want to hear Bolt from the Blue slander. That robot beat Firestone fair and square. I don't know what the issue
is. Still better.
Still salty.
I think a lot of people see pits as a great equalizer where like, anything can happen. I don't think that's the case. I think obviously, yes, it's a win condition for any robot, but 9 times out of 10, the better robot is better able to utilize said win conditions.
Okay, so
exactly. You said 9
forget what I said about the 100-0, but I think those may be 80-20 fights, and those are ones where it looks like a robot is dominating for 2.5 minutes of a fight, or in Robot Wars 4 minutes of a fight. That the pit being open is a constant reminder that anything can within pretty much anything can happen.
Yeah, check your ego at the door.
I agree with that generally, but
With at least competent robots.
I have two things I wanna say about that. One is that no matter the method, a robot absolutely dominating a fight and then just dying to more or less random chance in the final leg of the fight sucks pretty much any time it happens.
I disagree with it being called random chance.
I'm not saying
if it's
like,
a real opportunistic attack, then
well, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, the Behemoth Apollo pitting I cited is a really good one, and that one was a more or less Apollo dominated fight with Behemoth coming back for that last charge and shoving them in the pit, and that was brilliant because that was a comeback. That wasn't random chance. But if you're dominating a fight and, you bounce off of someone and fall in the pit, or you accidentally drive too close to it while you're trying to push them around or whatever, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
Can you actually?
We have stuff like that without pits. We had, I'm going to cite one of my biggest frustrations, Shredderator versus Wanhu. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where a robot's dominating, the other robot isn't really doing anything.
Right.
And then the fight is over and the robot who didn't do anything wins, typically is a very bad feeling. There are exceptions, but a lot of people see a lot of those fights and just don't like it, and I think that the pit enables that more than most other things do.
Sorry, go on.
I don't think it's that significant, especially if you design your arena well. So in the Beetle event, which you talked about, that did happen quite a bit, right? Because they put the pit right in the corner, so robots would bounce into the corner and then they would really struggle to leave the corner without falling in the pit. So I think the solution to this problem is don't put the pit really near the corner, right? I think pits can be really, really cool if they're done well. But I think in the modern era, where robots work properly, you want them only accessible for maybe the last minute or two in the fight. And you want to make sure they are central, and you want to make sure they are manually activated. If you put that in place, I think they're a really fun win con for any robot that can survive the first few minutes. But I think if you have them open all the time, you have them near the edges, then I agree that they make it much more subject to kind of random deaths that aren't really fun.
I think there's a few different arguments that are kind of in place here at the same time. There's the way that the Robot Wars pit was implemented has its own kind of ups and downs, pros and cons. The way it was implemented in the reboots, the way it's implemented in live events, and then ideally how it could be, implemented to be as close to idealistic as possible. Which for me personally, I would want lips on the pits to be more of a popular thing, so that robots can't really just drive down it by accident, which is an argument I think is vastly overstated and overplayed by a lot of people, not talking Zassa necessarily, but a lot of people that I hear that are anti-pit. Oh, you can just drive down it at any time. That actually very rarely happened in Robot Wars. Very
rarely. It happened
a
couple times. I can think Cassius did it, Kilohertz, of course.
Yeah, there's ones that you can name, obviously.
So a couple others did it.
I'll say this for classic Robot Wars. I think a lot of the reason it didn't happen more than it did, well, A, because a lot of the robots were not that fast and it kind of takes speed to run into something like that. But B, the arena was really big compared to what the pit was.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of driving space where you just were not near the pit. And that's kind of that's the kind of advantage it has over the shelf, which was a problem, because it took up so much space.
Just massive.
The pit was just one area where, if you goofed in that specific part of the arena, you might be fucked. Yeah, but there's plenty of other places you can drive around and be generally fine.
Yeah. But one time I think the pit
that's part of the reason that one of the several reasons we get it happening at smaller weight classes, because the arena is so much smaller and the robots are faster comparatively.
And physics is just crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say when they hit each other and they bounce around. Crazy Udas are so common there because they'll, hit each other and ping pong around and land in the little corner, and it's not like that Buddha corner is massive or anything. It's just it happens sometimes, and sometimes it's cool, and sometimes it's not. But the same thing
That's the
happens.
game.
So.
Yeah, just imagine like an ant weight or a beetle weight in the actual Series 10 Robot Wars heavyweight arena.
Get run over by Killlot.
It just gets squashed.
The other thing that I was gonna bring up with the pit is that again, it is without the presence of like TV to hype it up. It is not a particularly exciting hazard. Like, you know, it's one thing when you can see it like at a Beetle event where someone goes down the pit in a spectacular fashion and everyone around the arena pops off and you can see them because of the size of it. I have watched a dozen Robots Live and XR videos in the last week or so for various side projects, which I can't say I recommend anyone doing. That's not a fun experience for a lot of reasons. The pittings in those events are so lackluster because there's no fanfare. There's just like the one or two commentators going like, "Oh, fantastic! Ionol's got them in the pit."
I don't know. You get some pretty epic pitting moments in the live circuit, like some of the ones from early Robot Wars, Robot Live with like can opener suiciding into the pit with Sewer Snake was pretty rad.
I'm not touching early 2000s UK live scene with a 50-foot pole.
There's a lot of stinkers. I've had to sit down and watch them for all the projects I'm doing. There's a lot of shit. But there's some genuinely awesome pit moments. Like
I think I'd get
Toxic and Weird Malice. Like seeing Toxic struggle, and he barely gets out of Weird Malice's like. He barely gets out of the clutches of Weird Malice, does this little U-turn, and then shoves Weird Malice into the pit. That is genuinely cool.
I'm sure there's instances of robots flipping themselves out of the pit as well and things like that.
So hang on. So Zassa's argument is that the pit is not good when you have a small arena and it's not on TV. So obviously the answer is we should have a pit in the BattleBots and nowhere else. Is that what you're saying?
Put a pit on the upper deck.
Yes.
I think it would be a very bad idea in BattleBots for a number of reasons.
Yeah,
they'd probably just get a honestly, they'd probably just get They just probably just get a lawsuit.
Put it on the upper deck.
I would genuinely love a pit on the upper deck.
That'd be kind of cool. Actually, no. Here's how it would have to work. After like a 10-second countdown, it activates.
My main issue with it is that if you can't see you can't see anything on the upper deck from the driver's booth. I think having obstructions to your driving up there would probably be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, for legal reasons, I was joking. Don't put a pit on the upper deck.
But
I want to talk about the pit. There was one incident of the pit that I found really annoying. It was the Series 10 Mega Rumble when like half the bots ended up in the pit.
See, that was kind of comical, at least, because it
was funny. I don't think the pit's to blame, but I think the Fog of War is to blame. But oh my god, it was pretty ridiculous how often they were just dumping themselves in the pit.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Oh god, the Fog of War.
Thing is, what I will say is that the argument about being easy to drive into does hold true so much with the reboot Robot Wars arena. The pit was that much bigger, and it was a square arena as well. So you had all kinds of walls and sloped walls as well that you could bounce off and things like that. You saw Supernova; it kind of arced up and then when it started moving into the pit. I think that was Series 8, and then things like that. So and the pit was that much bigger as well, and it wasn't marked.
Best thing to do in this sort of situation is to like meet in the middle. And probably put it in like B tier or something.
I would put it in S. Honestly, I fucking love the pit. But
I could put the pit in S, but with the asterisk that it's got like the timer and it's not right in the corner. Because I do.
Let's put it in A then.
I want to object to that because we specifically cited earlier when we were talking about the screws that we're talking about a specific show hazard. We were talking about the Robot Wars pit, the way it was done on.
Well, Robot Wars handled it beautifully. In that case, it's definitely S.
I put in S maybe if with all the complaints. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. As far as I'm concerned, like with kill source, we've ranked that as BattleBots and KingerBots. It just so happens that the KingerBots ones were
that's because those ones function more or less the same. The only difference is the timing factor there. With
so I think we should include the pit as being KingerBots one as well.
Okay.
If we count that this is Fighting Robots Pit as well, fair enough. I think that bumps it up from an F to a D for me. No, I'm kidding. I would probably put it realistically around a C. I have a lot of issues with pits, but they did have their moments, and I can't deny that the original concept for them was a good solution to a bad problem. So,
Money, you've been really quiet lately. Do you have anything on the pit?
Props to the
I
producers.
Kind of can't give too much of my opinion on pits because I kind of echo the same point as Zassa. They filled a very, very good niche in making otherwise horrible fights, somewhat nail biting. But at the same time, too many robots started to build their entire strategy around it. And I will admit, I am a sucker for Tough as Nails, but that is a very good point about Tough as Nails.
I'm a sucker for Tornado. You don't boo me.
That would be like if someone built their robot specifically to Uda someone instantly.
Honestly, if you build a robot designed to do that, would honestly fair enough. It's not going to work every time. It's
what I remember is the Krusty Grab originally had a strategy like that, where they wanted to grab someone, dump them out instantly, and that just isn't very fun.
I just don't agree. I don't think it would have been. It's not fun if it works every time, but it wouldn't have worked every time, so it would have been fun.
Here's the thing that I'm going to say. I'm about to compare pits and like auto Uda strategies and other things like that to a lot of the Warwalk joke bots and things like Orb in the lower weight classes, where they're very obviously silly concepts and they're fun the first time you see them, and their entertainment value drops off significantly after that, because once you have seen it happen once, it stops being interesting because there's no real depth to it. It's the same thing with any instant KO method. It's the same thing with anything that is like, it's funny when you see it, and then afterwards, like, it stops being entertaining. It stops being nuanced. I think a lot of those things lose value after the first time you see it happen. I think the entertainment factor that comes from a lot of the good pittings is, it is either a comeback victory for someone, or it doesn't even have to be a comeback victory, just like something tense. Chaos 2 versus Wild Thing. Chaos 2 didn't end up in the pit, but the fact that they almost did made that fight a hell of a lot more tense than it was leading into that.
That was also the case with Bulldog Breed versus Tough as Nails. Like when you see Bulldog Breed get in Tough as Nails scores, you're like, oh god, it's going to get in the pit, but then they avoid it. Right? It's a really tense thing.
They do, but the rest of the fight isn't really that interesting, and that's a whole other problem I have with Tough as Nails. But we'll talk about that some other time, because Tough as Nails is not on trial here.
Tough as Nails.
Wait till I get spot of the week, I tell you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we get bot of the week, I'll come back on. And I'll have my whole tirade on Tough as Nails.
Oh god,
I want to be on for the Tough as Nails episode.
So sorry.
Bring me on the Tough as Nails episode.
I think we are close to finally concluding our pit segment, though. So I think we have.
Where does it go on the tier list?
We begrudgingly got Zassa up to a C. I think me and Clone were both putting it in S. If it's the Robot Wars pit, it's S.
No. Let me clarify. My C is conditional that's where it goes. If not,
I see. Okay.
If not, I'm pushing F just to balance things out.
Well, this is where I come in like a wrecking ball. And for me, like I've said, I do understand Zassa's points. I take them on board. I agree with most of them. I just think that a lot of them, especially with Tough as Nails, is very situational. And yes, okay, it did do what it did twice. It may not do that every time. There's a lot of hypotheticals over as to, would robots have changed their designs to not get pitted by tough as nails in such a way? But it happened twice in 10 fights.
Can you imagine?
Tornado.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you imagine everyone developing tornado cages just for tough as nails?
Oh my god, that'd be.
But the thing is, the way to not get pitted by tough as nails
It's
is
an
just
A-tan D.
them.
Yeah, like Bulldog Breed did a great job against tough as nails.
Well, this is it. As soon as tough as nails doesn't get like a solid grip on you, if it rides up your front, then you're okay to just flip it and try and wiggle it through.
I get that. I'm not saying that it was an unfair strategy. What I'm saying is that it was not an interesting strategy, and if they couldn't hit you immediately, they basically couldn't do anything else. Like, they didn't have the power to really crush anything. They could maybe make a couple dents in your armor. And I don't like the fact that so many I don't like the fact that robots were starting to gear themselves towards an instant win con, and if they couldn't get that, they couldn't do anything else. Like, at least flippers who were optimizing for the easy UDA could still get someone off the floor in the middle of the arena, and at least that was like vaguely interesting. And I'm not going to go on my rant about Brit flippers.
Anytime it really annoyed me was with Disco Inferno.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in the Iron Awe episode.
What are there? 9-10 Iron Aws?
God,
too many.
There's too many.
By the time we make the episode, there might be another one. They might.
I think
that when we get to the Tilly episode. Oh my lord!
The Mako episode.
The idea that you were sacrificing pretty much everything else about your robot for the instant kill shot, and if you didn't get that, like, you weren't doing much else in the fight, just nudging them towards it constantly, and if you couldn't do it, you couldn't do it. I don't think that's an interesting way to fight. So
I personally just disagree, but this isn't the tough as nails tier list. This is the pit tier list. So yeah, so we've had a D, an F/D, for Zassa. We've had 2 S's from me and Clone. Jack, were you?
I'd still give it an A personally. For me, the benefits outweigh the cons.
Very acceptable.
And I'd personally put it ahead of the screws.
For sure.
If we're doing
Money, where you're the final verdict here.
I would sort of meet in the middle. I have my gripes about the pit. It has undoubtedly given us very hype moments, but it also is a very big kick in the dick sometimes. I would put it at a B.
Yikes. So we're 1 S, 1 D, 1 A. No, 2 S's.
2 S's, haven't we? 2 S's?
Yeah, 2 S's, 1 A, 1 D, and 1 C.
1 F.
1 F. Okay.
God damn it, Zassa.
I guess it goes into. I guess by majority vote goes into S then.
But I
feel like we take everyone else's vote into account and let it drag down to A.
A seems acceptable.
Maybe the bottom of A because Zassa's been angry.
Yeah, should we say a low A then?
Yeah.
Oh, I put it high A. It's so cool.
I would say high A as well, but Zassa's been.
But I think we should take account of Zassa and Money's wrong opinions and put it at the bottom of A. I would actually like to add a caveat. Can I add a caveat that live scene and always live scene style pits are like D or C? I kind of agree with Zassa that they do some bad moments, but I don't know if we want to rank them separately or just have that as a footnote.
I think if we start making asterisks for every different adjustment for the pit, we would have a lot of different rankings. Because again, I think there are ways to make them not shit.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the pits as they were in Robot Wars, and I guess this is fighting robots. So.
Yeah, there's no point doing hypotheticals.
Okay.
Because
if we keep this tier list going through future episodes, maybe we'll rank the BBB pit and the whatever they use at is Motorama? No, Motorama didn't.
No, Motorama doesn't.
If there was a pit in the modern BattleBots, then I would instantly go for an F. Because it just doesn't need it. I don't think that's up for debate.
I'd like a pit in the modern battle.
You're wrong.
You would love a pit in BattleBots until Endgame gets 4 KOs in a row via pitting within the first
I don't think
minute of a fight.
needs a pit as
Because they're very
Endgame.
precise drivers, and you would be sitting there going, "Okay, yeah, I see the problem."
Yeah, but until I haven't seen the problem yet, so until then,
blindly driving towards a cliff and just like,
I don't see a problem.
There's no cliff until my wheels are no longer on the ground.
Okay. Right. Are we going to go for what else we got? Flame pit?
Should we
do the Fog of War next? Because I want to fucking.
Are we going low A then?
I need something to beat up.
Okay.
All right, hang on. Before we move on, I think we need a healing hazard. I think we need to talk about the drop zone. I think we can all agree this might be the funniest hazard ever invented.
It's funny because
hilarious.
It's funny because they kept swapping what the item they dropped was. If it was the same thing, if it was the same thing every time, it would get dull. But the fact that every single time the drop zone used, it was something different, like a washing machine, a bunch of like, it was like a bunch of leaded like bobber weights. They had like a
buoy.
boat buoy. We never got an anvil though. We never got an anvil.
God damn it! And in the Robot Wars game, you had an anvil, you had a piano.
Yeah.
A grand
the video game had a piano, but they aren't bound by the laws.
Depending on how much like cleanup you're willing to do, like if you could drop like watermelons and stuff on people, all sorts.
I'm saying, put a drop zone on the upper deck.
I really appreciate that with like the tennis balls, it's completely ineffectual, and the only thing it does is make a mess.
That's the best thing.
Except for when the tennis balls rolled into the pit, and we got to see the pit smoke. That was funny.
That's what I love about the drop zone. Is it's such a useless hazard, but they do it in such a comical way that like it's perfect. It's so funny, and you look forward to it every time because you don't know what's going to come out.
Yeah,
and you don't care that you don't care that it's not doing anything.
It's so ungodly stupid, but oh my god, you're not. It's not there to be effective. It's there to be fun.
It
I
also
think you
gives
get
us
points for it though.
I want to see more like Robot Combat video games incorporate a drop zone feature into their arenas. Like if you get RA2 or whatever, and you put drop zones in there, and because then you can drop literally whatever you want into the arena. There's no.
Oh my! Someone please mod please mod it so when the drop zone, it's one of the Easter Island heads, and when it hits the floor, you hear that stupid Moai thing.
My thought was you can drop like Teletubby ragdolls into the arena.
Right, Robot Rumble 2 developers. What are you doing?
Blushing emoji.
Stop making replicas.
Yeah,
Stop making replicas. Get on it.
The drop zone.
I think that would be peak.
Also gave us the in my opinion, the best image ever in Robot Wars is Granny's Revenge getting absolutely demolished by the drop zone.
Oh god.
It's such a fucking iconic moment, and it's like my favorite image to ever come out of Robot Combat.
Oh my god!
I have a lot of
things on fire. Just Granny's Revenge in general, just is such a treat because it didn't show up too often, and when it did, you're just cackling.
I have a lot of things to say about Robot Wars and the way that they didn't end fights when one robot was clearly done, but the drop zone made it worth it. Like, it sucked when you saw Matilda ripping someone apart with her ass or whatever. But when they pushed someone under the drop zone and they were clearly done and a fucking washing machine falls down on them, like, that's a peak finishing move right there. That's so funny.
This is the thing that's important to say. It was a finishing move. It wasn't.
Oh my god! Or the time on the Dutch Wars when they had they had Golem who was already eliminated. They just put Golem on the drop zone. Like in the Dutch Wars, they just dropped Golem.
I know it was German, but yeah, that was, and also great sportsmanship from the Golem team, right? Just letting the machine do that.
Exactly.
What I always remember is like in the New Blood, I think, where they have the like Knight Rider with it, and its spike gets bent upwards during the fight, and then when it dies, the TV just drops and gets impaled on the spike.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Oh my
and
god!
There's so much you can do with it, and I love it as a, it's a death hazard, not in that it kills you, but in that it is only really useful when someone is already dead and you just want to fuck with them.
Go.
You put them under the drop zone and some random crap
the
falls on them.
I mean, the thing is, it's a humiliation thing in a sense, isn't it? It's like it's also injury, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's also beautiful.
It's like having it's like having the pulverizers is like a rubber chicken, and you killed your opponent, and you turn off your weapon, you push them under, and you just thwack them with a rubber chicken.
Well, it's the robot combat equivalent of getting teabagged after you've been killed.
literally getting cock slapped.
Oh my god! Robot Wars Series 11. I bet if you happen, or Mech Mania, bring us back the drop zone and just put the dumbest shit on it. I want to see fucking like.
I will take back every bad thing I've ever said about the UK live scene if one of them adds a drop zone to their arena. I don't care how difficult that is to manage. I don't care if you're just dropping like Barbie dolls or whatever on people.
That would be hilarious.
It's incredible no matter what comes out of that thing, and I want to see that.
Do you remember in Series 7, was it Tomahawk? They put it under the drop zone. Dropped an ocean boy.
It's a booby marker
boy on there.
And it just rolls a bit too.
And it was like
it bounces off.
Yeah. Or the tennis balls on Mad Dog.
Oh,
or Major Tom. They both had tennis balls dropped on. The Major Tom one's the best because some of the balls roll into the pit and you see the pit smoke.
I was just trying to find who it was, but yeah, it was Mad Dog, wasn't it?
Mad Dog and Major Tom both had a bunch of tennis balls dropped on them.
I remember talking to Craig Croucher after the first time I saw Boat at a BBB event, and I was like, "Please, can you implement a drop zone in the arena and put Boat in it, so that when someone is defeated, they're pushed onto the drop zone and this boat on wheels falls on."
I'm the kind of person who would absolutely
it's like a
boat
horn.
That would just be the best image ever.
Okay, so is this a drop zone S then?
I think it's the first S.
It's too silly. It's so silly. I can't put it anywhere else. S for silly.
Stands for silly, yeah.
First S put it in S.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
It's the perfect combination of useless and funny that just like I will never get tired of seeing shit get dropped from the drop zone.
You know what?
The trash can drops on Demolition Man and it knocks Demolition Man on his side. It actually KO'd Demolition Man because the trash can fell on it and somehow Demolition Man tipped over on his side and it just died there.
It's the kind of thing you expected to be part of Comedy Central BattleBots.
Yeah, for real. But they probably put, like,
I'm surprised I didn't think of it first, honestly.
I feel like Comedy Central would kind of ruin it and put like a giant. Actually, no, a giant dick would be kind of funny.
Yeah, that would be very funny.
It would be huge in there.
They definitely make it more raunchy. You know, like Comedy Central would be like a pair of breasts or some shit like that.
Yeah, it would be like lingerie or something, or just Carmen Electra.
Oh god, like a blow-up doll of her.
Unspecified white
phallic object.
Actually, it'd be really funny if they dropped something. It was just like an aluminum cube, but they pixelated it on TV.
I want to see them drop like Dwayne Johnson from the drop zone. Just fucking elbow drops the robot.
Oh my god!
I don't care if he's after the fall. I just want to see it happen.
So we all love the drop zone.
It's so silly.
What about?
Yeah.
What about the flame pit? Sorry to bring it down a little bit.
The flame pit was. But you said the drop zone was useless. This thing felt ungodly unnecessary. whenever I watch Robot Wars with my dad and my brother, they are complaining all the time about the arena hazard, specifically the flame pit. It is my brother especially finds this thing so fucking distracting. He just hates it with every fiber of him, and it's just.
I don't hate the flame pit, if only because watching Sir Kill-A-Lot pick someone up and hold them over the flames is like badass.
Yeah, the barbecue roast with Kill. I love.
Yeah.
I don't hate the flame pit. It's just so useless.
It is the hazard ever.
Yeah, it's just there.
It is just
distinctly
that.
C to me.
Yeah, C.
I'd say C.
C works. I think it's just one of those like utterly uncontroversial. I don't think it ever did anything good or bad. It was just kind of like, yeah, it's there.
I think some of the shitter robots actually get like what was like Miss Nightshade or some shit. One of the really shitty ones from the modern era of Robot Wars, like they were being beat up and they just got stuck. Like something like got snagged. What?
You're thinking of Apocalypse?
Okay, Apocalypse was the one. They got like snagged on the flame pit grill and they just sat there.
Yeah, they ended up.
There was someone from Robot Wars. I can't remember who it was now, but they were on there forever.
It's definitely it's a very inoffensive hazard. No, offensive hazards. Fog of War.
Nothing. It's a nice spectacle, though. It's a nice spectacle.
So let me say this: I like the King of Bots Fog of War.
That was cool.
That's a very cool idea.
I think it was a little flawed in that, like, yes, everyone was just going to hit it immediately in the match, so they could, get their weapon spun up or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I like the concept of being able to obstruct your opponent for just a couple seconds. I think that had some real.
And you can only do it once. That was the big thing about unlike the Robot Wars Fog of War, which happened so many fucking times. It ruined it. For thinking about the King of Bots one, it didn't ruin. You could still see what was going on inside the arena.
That was the most important thing. It blocked only your opponent. The cameras could still see everything.
Yeah, I could still see what the fuck was going on. I hated Fog of War almost ruined Series 10 for me if the rest of Series 10 wasn't phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I hate you talk about the pit being the worst. The Fog of War is objectively the worst idea for a hazard.
I was gonna say, the pit is bad because of the way it can end fights. Fog of War is just bad in general. Like, it just doesn't have upsides the way it was implemented.
It's so annoying.
It's a stupid idea, in principle as well. Let's have this really expensive, fun thing that people go to see, and then make it so that they can't see it. Great.
Yeah.
Great
idea.
Backwards ass logic.
Yeah. I want to see the robots fight. I can't see it through the fucking fog.
What made it worse too is that they really, really wanted you to fucking know that they had the Fog of War in Series 10.
They kept
every
using
goddamn button push. It was Fog of War, and I wanted to. Oh God!
Especially during that 10-man melee where it happened so many times. Someone counted it too. I think that was Tale of the Toast. He counted how many times they used the Fog of War. It is not pretty how many times it activates.
I was trying desperately to influence the fight in any manner, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, Roadhouse Robot was kind of funny. I liked that idea.
On paper, I like the idea that with the Dial of Doom, it's not always the pit. If you go for it, you risk something that hurts you. Mm-hmm. I like that with the House Robot Rebellion. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
where cool. if you push it, they might just fucking grab you and start fucking you up, and at that point it's on you. The Fog of War just no, no.
This is the thing. When the Fog of War was going on, all the other hazards were still active as well. Nobody pressed the pit dial wanting the Fog of War. They wanted the pit.
Yeah.
Roadhouse Robot was happy medium, but they wanted the pit. They didn't want the Fog of War. Nobody wanted the Fog of War.
Yeah, and they kept getting it too. I think they said it was random, but I have a weird feeling that it wasn't random.
They wanted to show off their new shiny hazard. We all know it.
Yeah, and the thing
there's nothing shiny about it though.
I don't know how much of this you guys know, but I'm just on the page now on the Robot Wars wiki, and it says that the backlash was so bad that the Robot Wars Twitter account actually had to acknowledge negative reception and stated that if there was a prospective 11th Wars, there would be no Fog of War.
Okay, so they were aware.
That's
That is
actually
very
good.
good. They weren't oblivious.
They were self-aware of how negatively, received it was.
I don't think
Okay,
people
well,
also.
good.
I remember reading this was earlier, like 2018, 2019. People said the Fog War was the reason BBC canceled Robot Wars, and I'm like, I don't think that's true.
It wasn't. It
sucked.
was bad, but
It sucked a dick. Like I fucking hate the Fog War, but no, Series 10 is amazing. Like if you watch Series 10, the Fog War is shit, but the rest of it is really cool. Like you got Behemoth and Apollo, you got Eruption doing that whole
redemption arc thing.
Yeah, the redemption. Yeah, Carbide was there. There's so many awesome things about Series 10. The Fog of War just it's the equivalent of taking up like eating a sandwich and being upset, like the perfect sandwich, and then being upset like, oh, there was no lettuce.
they put red onions.
Yeah, they made one tiny little mistake in your sandwich, and it's all right, but it's all still like the perfect sandwich ever.
I think I don't think any robot combat show has been cancelled because of the content of the robot combat. Actually, thinking about
unless it was literally like the worst idea ever.
I don't know, Robotica.
Maybe
Robotica. I can tell you exactly why Robotica failed because everyone who tuned into Robotica thought they were going to get robot combat, and they got a fucking game. They got an obstacle course instead.
Yeah, like
that's what made Robotica fail. It came out at the time when robot combat was the thing, and everyone wanted to see the robots fight, and they're just doing obstacle course shit. That's why Robotica failed.
Yeah, maybe Robotica. I forgot about that one.
And if you look at some of the robots who signed up for Robotica, they're built like competitive robots. They're like wedges that are low to the ground. It's really funny.
Well, so many of them were like intended for BattleBots. So
yep, and they just wanted to be on TV. But that's a whole other can of worms.
I'm probably for another
here. I do like the mental image of like Maximus just driving through the paint cans and everything.
Yeah.
Maximus is
rip.
Shit. I love Maximus.
Shattering
cool.
So we think easy F tier for Fog of War?
Yeah,
this thing goes in G tier. It's so below F, it belongs in like G or H tier.
Like people complain about the upper deck. Oh my god, you have not lived through the Fog of War era.
This thing doesn't deserve F tier because F is to pay respects, and this shit doesn't deserve any.
No, it goes in G. It's so fucking bad.
All right, Chris, if you hear that, we're changing the F tier to be G.
I'm thinking Floor Flipper next, then, right?
Yeah, the one.
Can I talk about
a fun hazard?
No, I do not like the Floor Flipper. Actually,
okay.
The Floor Flipper actually really annoys me. I think.
Really?
Why?
Yeah, I think. Okay, so honestly, in the classic series of Robot Wars, absolutely fine. Like, no issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the reboot, when it was active while the actual fights were happening, this thing like disrupted so many fights, and I think there are a lot of robots that like, especially spinners, they get very disrupted by being flipped, and it's not like the pit where it's very easy to see. I think it's a bit bigger, and also like when it comes up, robots get stuck in it and damage it.
Cherub.
And this is mostly a live scene complaint.
Cherub deserved it.
There's mostly a live scene complaint as well. Like they could make loads of different hazards in the live scene arena, and the one hazard they choose does the thing that the robots do as well. Like, that's something else. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of the Floor Flipper. Not
so
happy.
You're saying the Floor Flipper in the reboot arena nerfed spinners, and that's a bad thing?
No, it nerfs.
I think it's a bad thing.
It's just lame. It's just so lame because
it's not a fun way to nerf spinners. I don't think. Like if you have like being put like you can still push them into like the house bots or whatever. Like they tend to because the contact like still forces them to stop. That's more disruptive than a control bot. But I think the Floor Flipper I don't know. It's just not fun for me. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's just a subjective thing.
I do
seeing robots flip each other, but I'm not a fan of it.
I do kind of see what you're saying in that, like, the arena separating robots who are trying to fight is not very entertaining. Like, it's one thing when a robot flings another robot across the arena and then has to chase them down again. If one just, like, gets yeeted by the arena, I'm flashing back to, if y'all remember, Robot Champions, like, 5 years ago when that was a game. And they had so many hazards that would just like fling you across the arena randomly, and like it was so difficult to avoid them because they would fire so instantly, and the driving was not terrific. You know, and that was so disruptive. So I can definitely see what you're saying. If someone like drove over the floor flipper for whatever reason and just eat, and suddenly they got to go fight again.
Yeah. And because and it's also like a not fun amount of impactful most of the time, right? Because most robots can self-right, and then they just self-right, or they can't self-right, and then it ends the fight. It's not a fun amount of impactful. Also, while we're on robot combat games, I just want to remember the like Robot Arena 2 DSL Robot Wars Arena, where the floor flipper was so powerful it would literally ooze you across the arena.
I have memories of that.
So what I'm hearing is you don't like it when hazards can end fights. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Okay. If the flipper has to the pit, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. But it doesn't, and therefore it's bad.
Okay, so the floor flipper, like the Hellraiser in BattleBots, I kind of get because most robots in BattleBots were just wedges, and having them be flipped over was kind of. I can see the concept working there, but in Robot Wars, a good majority are flippers. Like, you don't need a flipper to do something that people are already seeing over and over again. And flippers are cool, but you don't need the arena to flip things when the robot's already doing it. I get exactly where you're coming from. It's just kind of there. Like, I never thought about this much until now, but you really do bring up some valid points about how just redundant and useless it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's mostly because I feel like I've never seen anyone criticize the floor flipper before, and it's been bugging me for a while.
I think it's one of them things that, again, in the classic series, it was fine. You know, much like the drop zone, it was a bit of a humiliation hazard.
Fucking what was the featherweight that got flung clear against the wall?
No, it's no on it.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
That was beautiful.
That's there's no on it.
The most successful robot combat rampage.
Wait,
that was the name of the featherweight, I think.
There was G2.
Oh. I heard like, successful and rampage in the same sentence, and I had to like restart my brain.
And it won, and it made the featherweight final.
Yeah, my thought was the BattleBots rampage. I was like, wait, those words don't go in the same sentence.
I did quite like the tag team of Magnetar and the floor flipper. They had their shit together with that floor flipper completely by accident.
Cool, but like I feel like honestly,
they killed Push to Exit with it. They killed Thor with it, and then they punted Expulsion at it.
I think it's cool that they did that
but
once, but twice kind of felt like it robbed us of a proper destruction. Like, going Push to Exit, that's really cool. Like, that's a cool way to kill like a not great robot. But I think like the Thor fight would have been much more entertaining if instead of it getting one shot and stuck on its head, we saw it like slowly get ripped apart and take hit after hit after hit until it couldn't function. I think that would have been
in all fairness, Thor was already really floundering by the end of that. They had lost the side of drive. They were pretty damn beat up.
Yeah, they just didn't need to do that. That just got cocked.
Can I raise you guys Rapid versus Terahertz in the floor flipper arguments?
This is a positive for the floor flipper?
Yes.
Huh.
Aftershock in Terahertz. The floor flipper was what propped them up to let Aftershock, fucking haymaker them.
Honestly, and that felt like not super fun, to be honest. I was like, oh, that's really unlucky. Terahertz got caught there. I would have much rather they had like, that didn't happen.
I liked it because I enjoy watching. I mean this in the most absolutely kind way I can say it. I enjoy watching John Reed bots get punted by verts because it happens more than you'd think.
Yeah,
and it's always very entertaining. It's not that I like seeing his robots get demolished, but there's something about the way he builds them that when they just get shit canned by a vert, it's really they come apart in fantastic ways. Like
It's entertaining.
Tuncha versus Tungsten was a masterclass in absolutely reaming your opponent.
Yeah, Tanchi was just so outclassed.
It was in pieces by the end, and it's a shame because Tuncha's a beautiful machine, and I love it.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. It was really cool to see it hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, I just think with the floor flipper, ultimately, it's got a purpose. You know, the purpose is very different between the reboot and the classic series of Robot Wars. It was in King of Bots as well.
They did have it. They had some weird rules on it, and it didn't get used a ton. The most memorable time that it was fired was Great White versus Cheong Jinlun, where they fired it and flipped Cheong Jinlun, and then after the fight, we're told they fired it before they were allowed to fire it, and were therefore disqualified, and that was a weird thing.
All right, let's just ignore that they ever had a floor flipper.
Yeah.
Actually, tell you what though, I think I preferred the King of Bots one just because it was actually less powerful, so it didn't like separate the fight out. It just kind of
it was more for overturning.
Like a hazard that just turns robots over isn't as bad, but one that like flings them apart, I find quite annoying.
Yeah, I can. So where are we putting this? Like, I'm just so indifferent to it, but it's definitely very redundant. So maybe like a low C, maybe a D.
I would probably put it like D, but I feel like I'm fairly biased against the floor flipper, to be honest.
It's very redundant.
I'd happily give it a C, just above a flame pit.
I'd give it a C.
It's definitely more than a flame pit. I mean, you know, by virtue of the fact that it moves.
Right, we're going to C then?
That sounds fine.
Okay. Last but certainly not least, it's the floor spinner. The Disc of Doom.
Well, no. What about the floor spikes?
The floor dildos.
What about them?
Yeah, the floor dildos. That's a good callback.
I've kind of admitted them because. Oh, go on then. Let's talk about the spikes.
I'm gonna.
We're 3 hours in, guys.
I'm gonna say D because I really don't remember much about them except for that one time they high centered. Was it Sabretooth?
Yeah. They're just kind of there. Like,
Yeah,
I have no opinion on them.
Okay.
I have never had an opinion on the floor pistons or the ramrods or the floor spikes. They just exist.
Hilarious to see them in, like, I think it was Series 9 or something, in one of Ironside's fights where they just like fucking shot out of the floor and almost hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now I feel like the spikes are everything the flipper needs to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. It can turn robots over, but
I can hardly see how they're comparable.
Area, it's not like every fight. I would rather the floor flipper just be maybe some more spikes, to be honest. I quite like them. I'd happily have them in Steel B.
No.
They're like,
especially not in the classic era.
Maybe not in the classic era, just because the
classic era didn't even have spikes to begin with. And
BattleBots had them though.
Yeah.
Series 3, but they were really problematic because most robots couldn't self-right at that point.
Poke dead.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the angle grinders as well or not?
Good lord.
They
are just arc throwers. They are not hazards.
Toy sparklers.
Suppose that does leave the age-old floor spinner then.
So wait, where are we putting these spikes? Where are we putting these spiky boys?
I'd say C just because they're inoffensive.
I want them in C.
They just do nothing. I have no opinion on them. They just except
for
the
D because like they don't do anything, but when they do, they're more annoying than anything else of D.
Yeah, I would say C personally.
They were I think they're killing
not
blow on Bucky.
I think they're not problematic like the Hellraisers on Upper Deck can be, especially the Fog of War. And I'm kind of lumping spikes, ramrods, pistons all in this because they all do the same thing.
Lord
they're literally all the same thing.
Yeah, they're not the same
Anything long
spectacle
and
as a
hard
flame
and in the
pit.
floor.
But they're more actually impactful on a fight than the flame pit, and they don't make fights worse like the floor flipper does.
No, but they're not entertaining. Yet they have an impact on fights.
I know. I think they kind of are entertaining, to be honest. And like the way that they like create, I think it's a good way of like creating opportunities for robots without like being super directly impactful on fights.
Mm-hmm. All right,
I'm struggling to imagine where that was actually utilized, though. Where anybody really tactically used these hazards.
I think like
I'm sure there were some
there's one
fights,
or two
but
times where like I think the Big Nipper versus Danton Kier, like Big Nipper gets like hung up on the spikes and then Danton Kier comes in for a flip or something.
I know in classic BattleBots, some of the wedges, instead of dragging the kill saws for some unknown reason, sometimes Punjar would drag an opponent into the ramrods and just let the ramrods poke them. I have no memory.
Robots like Punjar couldn't put them in a pit, so
yeah, I know. But usually, what they do is they just push them into the kill saws. But for whatever reason, I can see it so vividly on mine where Punjar is pushing like one of the Long Beach 99. I think it's like Namrico or something, or no, it's not Namrico, but one. And it's like he pushes them into the floor spikes, and it's just poking on them. Like, why are you doing that? The kill saws are right behind you, bro. But yeah, they were
literally only remember the floor spikes ever like tipping Bucky over, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they did even less in Robot Wars.
They're inoffensive.
Like, really. Yeah, this is my argument for putting them at the back end of C, because they're inoffensive, but they're not a spectacle.
Yeah,
and they are annoying.
I can live with a low C.
That sounds fair.
Yeah,
I just have no other than people using them instead of the kill saws when they objectively should be using the kill saws in classic BattleBots.
Or hell, the pulverizer at that point.
Yeah, the pulverizer's in the corner. I can kind of see you want to keep them in the middle. I can see why and the kill saws did something, but yeah.
Okay, I'm going to buzz through this one really quick because we're over 3 hours now on the recording.
Yeah.
Floor spinner, Disc of Doom. I'm going to say low D. Never did anything.
These things.
Low D.
For lightweights, okay. So for lightweights, they were kind of funny because it was fun watching them kind of like get whipped around a little bit in classic BattleBots. But
and same with the featherweights.
Yeah, anything above the 60 pounds, it's just like pointless. Like, bro, like what the fuck? Like it did. Like Nightmare just drives over it and nothing happens.
The fact that there was a whole button to push in Robot Wars to activate the fucking floor spinner of all things.
It was just on 24/7 in BattleBots.
I mean, similarly with the Fog of War, they removed it for Series 7, so they knew it wasn't good.
Yeah, well, they removed it. Yeah, I think they just removed it because they needed space or something. But no, it just does absolutely nothing. Like when you get into the heavyweights.
Yeah. I mean, the only saving grace I can think is that the US version had little spikes and teeth on the surface of it, and they were cool. They were kind of cool in theory.
Because it's like, what I'm looking for. Manufactured traction, I guess.
Yeah.
And it did disrupt some robots, I guess, but
it just wasn't strong enough for the heavyweights. Like, it was funny for the lightweights. I don't remember any. It might have done something for some of the middleweights, but when it came to heavyweights, they just drove right over it. It did nothing.
They didn't even put it in any of the merch. That's how bad it was.
That's bad, especially because CC BattleBots had such like random choices for merch. Even you have to be like next level shit to not get any merch for CC BattleBots.
Yeah.
Like Blunt Force Trauma got a fucking toy.
Yeah, I figured out, like, why the fuck does this thing have a toy? It didn't even show up on the show.
I made these arguments when we talked about Tentamushi a while back.
Yeah, well, that thing was...
No one believed me.
Have you seen the Disc of Doom page on Robot Wars Wiki where it's got I don't think it's exhaustive because it's titled Notable Instances, but it details a lot of instances of where the Disc of Doom was activated, I guess. But I mean, how many times can you describe saying the Doom was, the Doom dial, not the Doom dial, Disc of Doom was, turned on,
I'm on the
and not a
page
lot
right
happened,
now,
and then it went off.
and like looking at the GIF of Bigger Brother activating the Disc of Doom when Rick's on it, and it's like you have to go over and activate a button to see a robot like turn a bit. Like,
Yeah, was it worth it?
It's just like
Big whoop, I see that all the time.
That's my GIF.
Big
But
whoop,
yeah,
I
the
turn
one
all
you
the
can
time.
see right next to it, you can see the US one with the Revolutionist there. And to be fair, I would have liked that a lot more for the UK series. Like, I wouldn't have minded if they kept it for Series 7, but made it so that there was some actual, if anybody's still got air-filled tyres, for example, and they drive over it, they might get slashed. Who knows? Gravity, for example, had air-filled tyres in Series 7.
Well, I actually did table all of the times it did anything. That's how infrequently it did anything.
That's just the notable ones.
Oh, I suppose.
I can't think of any notable examples, though, that are truly notable.
Yeah,
But,
I think that's a good summary for this hazard as well. Not notable in any capacity.
No.
Just
D probably. It just does
D,
nothing.
yeah.
Do we want to say below Hellraisers and above Volume 4?
Yeah, I'd say below them because
something.
Okay.
It was just not
D for doesn't do shit.
D for Disc, D for Doom, D for done with this episode, guys.
Yeah. This was fun.
We're done. This was
very fun.
Yeah.
D for undoubtedly a good episode.
Yeah. Really long one.
Damn, that was 3
Oh,
hours.
the long one. Good one, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, holy crap. I was like, wow, we're still going. Most of it was just us arguing about the pit.
Yeah,
and the upper deck.
Amazing way to
You're
spend my time.
welcome.
Right. Editor note for Chris. If you can
Part-time
get this
job
under 2
is-
hours, then you're a miracle worker.
Yeah.
Good thing we get paid by the hour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Don't be
that's
pissed.
my old bonus.
Chris, I'll send you my PayPal, mate. Suggest you guys do the same.
Yeah. I accept cash.
I do Cash App.
Mm.
And favors and more time on the next episode. Because I really want to
Yeah.
talk about Apollo.
This was really fun, though.
It
was
was
always
actually,
blast.
right? Yeah.
I'm also really tired.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's like
really
10
I
o'clock
imagine
for
it's,
Brits.
it's 10 for y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just hit 10 o'clock now.
Fun time
Yeah,
zones.
so I don't know. So we'll call it a day. This has been ChattleBots. Thank you so much for watching. Been joined by CloneKiller.
Woo!
Money Talks.
Present.
Nametab.
Just about present. Thanks for watching.
And Zassa.
Pit should have been F tier.
God damn it. All right. I've been Jack. Subscribe if you haven't, I guess. The CJC channel. Yeah.
Or like the thing on Spotify if you're listening to that.
Yeah, we're on Spotify, I think. There's a Facebook page. Yeah, Chris has been putting in the work behind the scenes, so
Hit diss track coming soon.
oh yeah, that'll be the day.
You do not want to hear me rap.
Zassa doing a diss track on Pits and Tough as Nails. Oh, Jim.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
See ya, everyone.
Bye.